It's 2004. Your mom takes you to Walmart under the compromise that she'll get you anything in the store as long as you just shut your mouth for like a little bit. So you sit there, the entire grocery trip in complete silence, or the best that you can muster for a 4-year-old. And you don't really remember too much of what happens next, except for the image of you holding a VHS tape in your hands as you're sitting at the checkout counter waiting for your mother to pay. This VHS tape might be my first introduction to Power Rangers. I always struggle when people ask me how I started watching Power Rangers or where my introduction was to the brand. I feel like it was just something that always existed since the beginning of time. Like, I can't rationalize how that's not the case for everyone else, really. Like, to me, God made the world in a week, and then Super Sentai on the 8th day, and then Power Rangers maybe like a month later. I have vague memories of seeing reruns of almost every season back in the day, whenever my family was really lucky enough to have cable. But this VHS tape is my earliest, most concrete memory with the series. I remember the toys for this show being on the shelves as a kid, and I remember watching the commercials on Jetix late at night or whenever I was home from school. And I even had a day, I'm pretty sure I had a Dino Thunder themed birthday party one year, or at the very least, I know for a fact I dressed up as the Red Ranger from this series once for Halloween. So I'd have to say that Dino Thunder was probably my first season, or at the very least, it was the season that was on when I first got into the show. And I get this weird feeling whenever I see these suits in particular that I don't really get whenever I see any other show, I guess, outside of maybe Ninja Storm or like SPD. I don't want to call it nostalgia, but it's definitely more sentimental, right? I mean, it makes sense. Those were probably the shows that were airing most when I was going into first grade. So that's, child psychology, whatever, right? Now I'm a grown-ass man and I have a real job or whatever, and thankfully I'm able to work from home 2 days a week. I used that opportunity to put on comfort shows as like background noise while I was focusing on my work. Just something to listen in the background that I didn't have to pay too much attention to because I already knew what happened. Brain rot, whatever, all right? And I figured I'd put on the first episode of Dino Thunder for no particular reason. And after watching the first episode and a half, maybe, I realized that I haven't watched this show in about 15 years, which is weird because, while I don't know if this is my first Power Ranger season, right? I absolutely tell people that it's one of my favorites. And for some reason, I thought I knew every exact detail about this show. But I guess not. I think my problem is that I confused like YouTube essays, like history of the Power Rangers or like Disney Brain videos with my own experience. So now here I am, 24 years old, rediscovering what was my favorite show when I was 4 years old. The show that had such an impact on me. Like I genuinely think that if my mom didn't buy me this VHS tape when we went to the store that day, that I would have never fallen in love with Power Rangers. I would have never discovered Sentai or Kamen Rider. I would have never asked my mom for a GameCube when I saw that game at Toys R Us that day. I would have never posted a video about Toku to my channel. For better or worse. I would have never met any of you. And I probably would be an entirely different person today. Literally everything about me, including my morals, my aspirations, my deep yearning for children's toys, could be traced back to the fact that I picked out this VHS tape over anything else on the shelves at that Walmart. Lord knows that even if I picked out a different Dino Thunder VHS tape, maybe this wouldn't have hooked me the way that this one did. There were so many things that had to go right for me to be here in this moment. And yet, I haven't bothered to rewatch this show that has had such an impact on my life in nearly 20 years. How does that happen? I figured I would document my experience rewatching my favorite Power Rangers season with you for the first time in 20 years. But before we begin, I highly encourage you to either go check it out yourself before watching this video, or maybe after. I prefer after because I really don't want to have my watch time messed up, please. But whatever you prefer, to be honest, it's up to you. Starting with the first thing you see when you begin the series, the intro just hits like a truck, man. Like, I don't know a lot about music, so I'm not going to be great at explaining what I'm hearing, maybe, but it sounds more theatrical than other theme songs. The way it builds and like crescendos at one point, I'm probably saying this all wrong, but it's bigger. It feels more, and maybe that's the nostalgia talking. Like most kids shows, the intro is mostly a highlight reel of all the toys they're about to sell you. It's really fast paced, but it seems very intentional in the way it introduces things and like builds over time, with it ending on the logo, which, by the way, is one of the best Power Rangers logos ever made. Like, look at this. Look at this. They made the T-Rex tail the Thunderbolt. That is the most creative, genius thing that they have ever done with any logo. I don't know whose idea that was, but I pray to God they got their Christmas bonus that year, because this is this logo has so much sauce compared to every other Power Rangers series. It's not even like funny, dude. The logo, man. All right, look at this. The episode is titled Day of the Dino, a reference to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode 1, Day of the Dumpster. The aesthetic of the show, you'll immediately notice, is very early 2000s Y2K. I feel like this is an aspect of Power Rangers that doesn't really get talked about enough. Like, we talk about the suits and Zords and weapons when it comes to like designs, but we never really talk about the aesthetic that each season embodies outside of those elements. Like, one look at the Mighty Morphin teenagers and you can very much tell that they represent what the 90s were. Not only in the way they dress, but their haircuts, their hangout spots, and the type of slang that they use is very much rooted in the era that it's from. The Ninja Storm Rangers are another very obvious example of this. Their slang, their interests in extreme sports, and the way they look outside of those ninja outfits is very extreme. Like, it exists in that transitional era between the 90s and early 2000s. It's hard to explain if you weren't really there, I guess. The world and the casual attire of the year 3000 in that first episode of Time Force immediately nails that sci-fi TV sort of vibe, you know? And like I said, Dino Thunder is very, very Y2K. I remember wanting to dress like this back when I was a kid, even though they look so stupid today. And it's not just a visual aesthetic, but it's like a cultural one as well. Each of the main teenagers embodies elements of the time period we're in, and they also build off the typical Power Rangers character archetypes while doing that. Ethan is a nerd in a very different way to how Billy was a nerd. With the rise of the internet, there was this group of people that became very interested in computers, video games, and like geek culture as a hobby, where they found communities online. While Billy was like really smart and handy with computers and other tech, he took an interest in it because it was like new and not super common yet. While Ethan has a similar passion and excitement for these things, it's like more of the time for him. And him being the blue Triceratops Ranger as well as being the nerd is a very like full circle moment in a weird way. Connor embodies what every 12-year-old was trying to be in the early 2000s, like that cool guy sort of front that's meant to impress people. God forbid people thought you had feelings back in the day. He's a jock and almost feels like a complete opposite to the previous Red T-Rex Ranger, where Jason, yes, was athletic and participated in school sports. If you want to call karate that, I don't know. He had this passion for doing the right thing and a drive to help people. Connor, on the other hand, is incredibly selfish and also a little stupid. Kira, I feel like, is nothing like either of the other girls from MMPR, but in terms of that early 2000 stuff that we mentioned, it's very obvious. At one point, she's even called like an Avril, I don't know how to pronounce that. Avril Lavigne wannabe.
Why would Connor McKnight, king of all jocks, be hanging out with Ethan James?
Right.
Not to mention the Avril wannabe.
And name dropping a real world celebrity in Power Rangers is just something I feel like we don't do anymore, or stopped doing at some point. Ethan and Connor reference Batman.
Dude, the guy's a teacher, not Batman.
Judge Judy.
Save it for Judge Judy, Mr. James.
The Three Bears.
What, you never heard of the Three Bears?
The Three Bears. That's like a distinguished cultural reference for Power Rangers, dude. Listen, I know it's not that deep, all right? I get it. But like other seasons, particularly the Neo Saban ones, they feel like they exist in this bubble that doesn't reference the outside world and doesn't obviously take place during any specific moment in history. I believe the intention for this is to make the show feel universal so that anyone of any age or culture could pick it up, but that's like kind of the charm of Power Rangers. That's the reason people used to call this season the modern, for the time, Mighty Morphin. Like, these are seasons that make a great effort to display the time frame in which they exist. Shows like Samurai, Megaforce, Ninja Steel all have very similar vibes, and they all feel like they're trying to recapture what Mighty Morphin was. But the issue is that, like, part of the charm of Mighty Morphin is how enriched it is in 90s culture, but those shows aren't able to tap into that simply just for existing outside of that world or time, because it'll just seem dated, right? This kind of leads to these shows almost having nothing to stand on, almost, in my opinion. Not commenting on the story, but in which, like, the way it presents itself. You know, vibes. Meanwhile, Dino Thunder takes the outline of Mighty Morphin, but introduces a new, more modern perspective into it. Okay, we've kind of lost the plot. I just feel like that was a point I had to make at the top, because it's important that you understand not only like what this show is about, but like how it feels to watch it. The first episode begins. How deep are we? Could you wiggle your mouse on the video for a second, or like tap the screen? Oh, wow, we're just starting. Okay. On this adventurer trying to escape this laboratory filled with these shadowy figures, it's revealed to be Tommy Oliver. All right, one more thing and we'll get to the actual plot. Okay, listen. So like I said, Power Rangers for me always kind of existed. So the idea of this may have kind of been lost for me as a kid, but it's such a cool concept now that I'm able to think critically, just in general. Rest in peace to JDF. I mean that in the most sincerest way possible, because he really was like a treasure to this world. And love it or hate it, but Tommy was at one point the face of the franchise, right? And I know that pisses a lot of people off, but you need to understand that these shows typically kind of need someone like that in order to survive. Like, Pokemon has a ton of creatures that you may love, but they focus on Pikachu for a reason. Or like the Looney Tunes will always put Bugs Bunny in front of Tweety Bird and the Roadrunner, even if those guys may be your favorite. A big part of what makes Power Rangers so charming is just how many teams there are. Yeah, like I agree with you, but Tommy is kind of the main character, at least for those first few seasons. And him being around was integral for the show's success. They needed a central figure to rely on, especially if they were going to allow other cast members to come and go. I know this really has nothing to do with anything, but if both ASJ and JDF were on the same page about being paid more, I promise you Saban would not have let both of them go. Now, granted, in Dino Thunder, you could have gotten any of the original 5 to 9, depending on how you want to count them, and it would have been just as cool. Arguably, Billy would have made a lot more sense for this role. But even before this, Tommy was more popular and lasted longer than any other character in the show's history. He's had 4 suits for a reason. Like, not a single other Ranger even touches that. Jason has 2, Rocky and the In-Space crew have 2, Kat and Adam get close with 3, but Tommy has the most costume changes of any Ranger, but none of these other characters coming back would have been as impactful as seeing Tommy again. And as someone who calls this their first season, this kind of just is my Tommy, to be honest. And he rocks in this show. You don't need to know anything about him beforehand to like the character. The concept of having a ranger mentor the new rangers while also being a ranger himself is amazing and well timed, considering the show had been running for over a decade at this point. And this is the first time the show had returned to dinosaurs since Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Not to mention the Black Ranger in the Sentai footage just sort of lends itself to this type of role. There's so many things that had to line up for this to work, and they pull it off so beautifully. We discover that he's a doctor in paleontology and that he recently got a job teaching biology at the local high school. He seems a little overqualified for this job, even the principal comments on that, who definitely is not a villain. Alright, she is. I don't know how she was able to Clark Kent her way through most of this season, but you'll get over it. Her hair is kind of different too, so maybe that's a big part of it. Tommy, or Dr. O, as he's referred to in the season, enters an unruly classroom where we're introduced to Cassidy Cornell and her bitch, Devin. They're like the bulk and skull of this show. And this was really before that was a tired concept, by the way, and I promise you, these two are done really well here. You just gotta sit with me on this, all right? She works for the school's newspaper or news station. Did your school have a news station? Or like at least one that like people cared about? Because I don't think mine did. They're not bullies in the same way Bulk and Skull were bullies. I'd actually qualify Devin as a victim. When Cassidy's not around, he's actually really chill. Cassidy is like that popular girl that's popular for no reason, which is a very modern interpretation of the idea of what a bully was in the 2000s, because kids don't shake you down for lunch money anymore. Today, or at the very least during the early 2000s, they kind of just outcast you for being fat or poor, I guess even really different in general. If they were to redo this concept today, she'd probably be making passive-aggressive TikToks and subtweets. We discovered that one of the students, Connor, has skipped class.
Don't worry about Randall. She's a woman.
Connor's a misogynist. We also see Ethan hacking into the sprinkler system as a prank, and Kira is playing guitar. I guess that's really fucked up in this high school. Everyone, including the staff, looks down on her for this. This leads to the three teenagers getting detention, which is something we never had in Mighty Morphin. These guys would have ended up being held after school for loving charity too much, not skipping class and playing guitar, and we definitely would have never seen something like that in like Megaforce or Ninja Steel. There's a lot of pressure in these shows sometimes to have these very squeaky clean heroes, which I understand because the show's made for kids, and they're meant to look up to them. But God, does it make for some really uninteresting characters sometimes. This trio begin their story as impulsive, over-emotional, flawed people, like real teenagers. And it's something that I feel the Disney seasons do really well at, is having characters that feel like real people. Dr. O is assigned to watch them for detention, but he says that he has plans after work, and Principal Randall suggests that he could just take them with him. And I really feel like that would not fly today. Regardless of the time period, like that's just unethical to take children on a field trip without parental consent. Not to mention the legal issues surrounding the fact that he tells them to kind of fuck off in the woods for an hour. But suspension of disbelief, I guess, right? He encourages them to find something prehistoric and tells them that he'll let them out early if they do. I don't know what he expects them to find just lying around in the woods, but they end up finding this hole that he dug. Ethan tries to warn them of the dangers of being outside and says this:
"Stuff happens out here. Just don't come crying to me when you fall in a giant sinkhole."
And then this happens. This is kind of a running bit in the show, like Ethan will say something and then that thing just happens. It's kind of hilarious.
Remember what happened last time you did that? No. I mean, she's not just gonna fall out of the sky and land right in front of us. Huh?
Tommy discovers that the museum they're at is owned by Anton Mercer, and this confuses him, for reasons that we'll talk about later. But then a statue of a T-Rex comes to life, and he does that spin kick thing that he always does. And I know some people who hate fun say this moment is unrealistic and lame, but the entirety of Power Rangers is kind of unrealistic and lame. And this is like my top 5, one of my top 5 favorite Tommy moments. I'm not gonna lie. He sees a real life T-Rex for the first time, and his first instinct is to kick it in the teeth. Come on. Back at the tunnels.
Babe, can you keep it down?
Not gonna lie, I would think that's annoying too. I wouldn't have called her babe because I'm a feminist, but people that just sing for the sake of singing because they can sing was something that really bothered me in high school. I really hated choir kids for the most part. Most of them. Meanwhile, Tommy's still trying not to fucking die when he finds out the T-Rex is a robot. While in the trenches, the teenagers discover this set of dinosaur bones and pull the jaw, revealing this secret laboratory where they discover the dino gems.
Where are you going?
I don't want to think about what kind of a freak lives in a place like this.
Speaking of freaks, we actually got one of the most scariest villains in Power Rangers from this season. If you're like 4, Mezagag and Lord Zed are like top 10 levels of threatening when you're a child, because this one is like a skinless dude and this one is just like an abomination, like a freak, literal freak, 2 freaks of nature. And now they kiss. Mezagag senses the gems have been moved and sends out foot soldiers to go retrieve them. How does he know this? There's a lot of things that you just kind of have to accept during this show. We're just gonna make this the first entry on a very long list of those things, along with the non-consensual field trip and Principal Randall being Elsa. But in all fairness, the energy of the Dino Gems is never really explained in full detail, but they're portrayed as being these incredibly powerful stones that have a ton of energy flowing through them. While encountering the foot soldiers, the trio discover that they're able to do things that they weren't able to do before, such as scream loud, run fast, and have tough skin. These are referred to in the fandom as civilian powers, and some people really hate them. I personally kind of enjoy them. I think they make the Rangers feel more heroic or cooler, both in and out of suit, but what do I know? You could also argue that they tie into the Rangers' personality, with Connor being a jock, Kira being a singer, and Ethan needing thick skin for being a geek. The next day at school, the kids agreed to never tell anyone about the situation. Yo, it's weird calling them kids, I'm not gonna lie. They used to look like grown-ass people to me when I was a child. Now I'm looking at them and they kind of look like toddlers, low-key. I look like I'm 30 and have been smoking cigarettes for the past 15 years, dog. These guys are spry chickens. Cassidy notices the 3 hanging out.
There's something weird about Dr. Oliver. I mean, seriously, I called Angel Grove High and they wouldn't tell me anything.
Oh shit. We got an Angel Grove mention. Kira quits being a ranger before ever even receiving her powers, but she's very quickly kidnapped by foot soldiers after giving Connor her dino gem. In the next episode, Connor begins whipping it.
Okay, so where are we going?
Like, brother, you cannot be older than 17. There's no way you should be driving like this. Nor should you have this car. What the fuck? They drive to Dr. O's house and he's nowhere to be found, but the door is unlocked, so they decide to just enter, which is illegal. Not only do they get detention in this episode, but they also break the law. These guys kind of rock. They find the lab where they discover the dino gems, and Tommy is inside. The two come clean about what's happened to them, and Dr. O explains that the foot soldiers are called Tyrannodrones. Meanwhile, Kira is being pressed by Mezagag as to where the dino gems are. She's able to escape his base through an invisiportal, which is like wormholes that are just like everywhere this season, thankfully landing on Dr. O's car. A fight ensues, and sometime later, Mezagag and Zeltrax, his lead henchman, release the Biozords on Reefside. Yeah, we'll just put that on the list too. And the students press Dr. O for a further explanation as to what's happening. It turns out him and Anton Mercer created the Biozords, but they have fallen into the wrong hands, and now the students have to tame them.
I'll BBL if it's all the same to you. What's that mean?
Yo, what? I didn't know Ethan got down like that. I like to imagine Ethan canonically had a BBL scheduled until he found out that he had to wear spandex for the next year. That's my headcanon. After this, they're given the Dinomorphers, which are connected to the Dino Gems, and Dr. O explains how the gems are fragments from the asteroids that wiped out the dinosaurs, an event that we will witness happen during the events of Dino Supercharge.
I know you 3 are from different worlds. I get it. This won't be easy. Nobody knows that better than I do.
This is one of the best speeches in all of Power Rangers. I feel like I don't even have to explain it really, it's just kind of raw. They morph for the first time, and this is our first look at their suits and weapons that are definitely not sentient. I really like the suits, to be honest. The diamond pattern feels like a natural progression from the Jew Ranger MMPR suits, even though I'm sure they weren't designed with that in mind. but in universe it's a very cool detail considering Tommy made them, and I always like a red, blue, and yellow team, to be honest, so I'm always going to think that they look good together. Their weapons are some of my favorites in Power Rangers history too. They do a good job of both representing the dinosaur while also serving the function of being a believable weapon. Shortly after the fight, they're able to tame the Zords, and of course, like everything about this season, I love these Zords. They have this look to them that makes them look like cartoons that have come to life. These and the wild Zords are on that same sort of level where they're these real animals that are just more stylized to look extra cool. Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm going to love every design in this show. It's nostalgia, okay?
But as long as you work together, no one can defeat you.
And that closes out the first 2 episodes. It's an incredible start to the series, and it's very rare that the first episode itself does not have a morph sequence or any sort of Zord footage whatsoever, but I love how they allow the show time to breathe and build upon itself properly. The way it's shot is just very different from other seasons, I feel. This is something that I hope you'll pay attention to more, but it's almost like a drama at some points, like Baby's First Degrassi, and I kind of love it. I really think it's just a lighting though, to be honest. If these 2 episodes are enough to make you want to go watch the show, I encourage you to do so. Before we move on to the rest of the video, like I said, it's a great show. Before we move forward, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Patreon. I opened a Patreon. I just want this to be casual or whatever. I don't want this to come off like I'm forcing anyone or like begging or anything like that. I just wanted to casually drop. I opened a Patreon. The benefits for it are in the description or the link in the description and on screen right now. Do note that there are perks that include exclusive videos on there. And if you go to the Patreon right now, it may be barren or there may be nothing there. And the reason for that is because, to put it simply, I don't want to like post anything if no one's subscribed. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't make sense to put my time into making something if no one's watching it. Anyways, let's move on. Episode 3 begins with Ethan inviting Kira and Connor to Haley's Cyber Cafe, which is a computer cafe that occasionally has live music and other events, and this acts as the Rangers' juice bar this season and is their main hangout spot. I think it's kind of sweet that Ethan would want to introduce his teammates into his world at the Cyber Cafe. Remember that he is like a nerd, so he probably doesn't have too many friends, so it makes sense that he would really want to like connect with everyone.
I just figured, hey, we're gonna be saving the world together. I wanted you guys to see what I'm about.
Okay, whatever, dude.
That made me so mad watching that. Like, I'm actually angry thinking about it. Like, he's just trying to be nice here. Ethan's just trying to be like nice to him, and he cannot help but be a dude. I'll just stop. The owner, Haley, walks by to get their orders and offers Kira a chance to perform at the cafe and tells Connor about the tryouts for the local soccer team. Haley's whole thing is helping the kids at the cafe reach their goals in whatever way she possibly can. She's an okay character. I like her enough. Her acting is kind of a bit stale, but I feel like she doesn't have a whole lot to work with here, if I'm being honest, outside of the whole like, oh, I really like these kids and I want to help them and be active in the community. And I'm also going to be like really sarcastic about it the entire time. Dr. O contacts Ethan to help retrieve the power eggs, which, spoilers for later, become the Raptor Riders, and I just adore them. The team is going to get motorcycles later too, but I like the concept of the Rangers having different modes of transportation, I guess. Besides like the horses in Samurai, I don't really think we get too many things outside of just generic bikes for every team. There are like the surfboards in Mega Ranger and stuff. Okay. I just find the Raptor Riders to be super creative, with them being like living, breathing dinosaurs that are hatched from eggs and all that. Speaking of living things though, this isn't the last set of eggs we're going to find. This season treats the Zords, the Raptors, etc. as living dinosaurs. Other teams have done this before in the past, arguably better with things like the Galactabeasts or the Wild Zords, but a big part of this season is fossil hunting. Finding eggs, resurrecting dinosaurs, having them be kidnapped on occasion and switching sides. It's a really fun twist to the theme that other dinosaur seasons really don't do, and I love how this season takes advantage of that. While procuring the eggs, I learned that word from Boom Boomger, Tommy and Ethan are attacked by Elsa and Zeltrax. They call for backup, and this causes Connor to miss his soccer tryouts. The coach says this to Connor when he comes back.
Is anything more important to you than soccer? This isn't the place for you.
Which is insane, because for all intents and purposes, Connor could have gone to go see, like, a dying family member. Like, this could be his last time ever seeing his mother, and this would have been the coach's response. Wild. Now Connor is pissed, and rightfully so, but instead of directing his frustration with the situation towards the coach, who actually wronged him, he instead chooses to feel bad for himself and asks to quit the team the minute things begin to inconvenience him, which is an incredibly immature response. Like an actual teenager would have. He feels like an actual teenager. This is a response that a teenager, an adolescent would have. He talks to Dr. O about the situation, and he says that he relates.
I know how you feel, because I felt that way before. I want you to think about this before you do anything.
Tommy has a very unique perspective as a mentor, because it was only 8 years ago or so, we really don't know where the show takes place in the timeline, that he was in the same situation that these kids are in today. And I'm happy to see that the show allows them to relate like this. I remember countless karate tournaments being interrupted by a call from Zordon. Yes, Tommy never complained about it, but the show never let him. Now the characters are able to actually have more depth and feel things. These teenagers are reacting to things that Tommy also had to go through, but with a stoic face. Of course, Tommy is able to call and clear things up with the coach, which is great for Connor, and while at the cyber cafe, a monster suddenly appears and Connor agrees to help out with one more fight, during which he ends up saving this little girl that he ran into earlier in the episode, and they share this moment towards the end, and this teaches Connor an important lesson. Now, instead of seeing his ranger duties as an inconvenience, he ends up saying that it is the most important thing in the world, which is a great moment for his character. We're only 3 episodes into the show, and they're already trying to develop these characters in meaningful ways. Other things worth mentioning is Trent is introduced in this episode. He's new in town and it's his first day working at the cyber cafe, and if you can't tell by his outfit, he's going to be the White Ranger, and this is something I actually really enjoy about the Disney seasons. They typically introduce characters episodes before they actually morph into Rangers, and I like that because it makes it more impactful when they eventually get to be members of the team. It's better than just some random dude showing up for no reason. Trent having a relationship with the team and that being established episodes before he becomes the evil White Ranger actually goes a long way towards his arc, and we'll get more into that later. Other important notes is Kira has a little crush on him. This causes her and Ethan to exchange in some playful banter. Bro, they feel like actual teenagers, but more importantly, they feel like friends. Like, this scene is cute. The episode ends with Kira performing one of her songs at the cyber cafe. Dr. O is on his way to see Kira's performance, but he's kidnapped by a group of Tyrannodrones, leading into episode 4, Legacy of Power, commemorating 500 episodes of Power Rangers. May the power live on forever. Damn, that aged poorly. It starts with Mezagag attempting to extract a power source from this meteor-looking rock, and he kidnapped Tommy to help him do so.
Super Ninja Space Wars.
You cannot tell me that's not a Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad mention. That's a Superhuman Samurai Squad mention. In search of Dr. O, the trio get into his computer, where we see he's given a recap of the entire Power Rangers franchise. Kind of like what this video is supposed to be, but it's much shorter and goes over a lot more information over a longer period of time. YouTube values watch time over quality, alright? Brevity is dead. Let me have my bag. He literally goes over almost everything, and it feels like such a celebration of the show. They handle it with so much respect and mention damn near every Power Ranger, showing off every single character that's donned the suit, except the Alien Rangers, because fuck them, I guess. They saved his life when he was turned into a toddler, but he couldn't even bother to remember their names. This came at a time where Power Rangers started to feel more and more disconnected. Lost Galaxy was 5 years ago at this point, and that was the last time that we had a season where characters carried over from a previous one, with Alpha 5 and Corone. And with Ninja Storm having no mention of anything that came before it, and a reference to Power Rangers potentially being fictional, it's just cool to have everything feel connected again. Which should be obvious because Tommy is here, but it's cool to have references to the stuff in between. One thing of note is that Tommy has a crazy amount of footage for events that he was never there for. We'll just add this to the list, unless we want to assume that he somehow is able to hack into the morphing grid or the universe. We also find out Connor has a twin brother who went to the Wind Ninja Academy.
My twin brother went to this super secret ninja school.
Everyone there knew a few of the students got chosen to be Rangers.
Which is a funny way to explain the fact that Jason Napier showed up in the last episode of Power Rangers Ninja Storm. We also find out that Haley's been working with Dr. O. Apparently, she's the one who came up with the morphers as well as a lot of the tech for the team.
I mean, Tommy's good with dinosaurs and fossils, but a rocket scientist? He ain't.
They never really explain their relationship outside of the two of them being friends in college. My headcanon as a kid is that she was his wife. I don't know why. Women characters don't exist outside of being connected romantically to men. I was a prick when I was 4. What can I say? Later on in Ninja Steel, they reveal that Tommy is actually married to Kat, which they also reference in Once and Always. And to be honest, Dr. O and Haley have zero romantic chemistry whatsoever, so I really don't know what I was thinking. While this episode could just be considered a glorified clip show, it's really awesome that the series took a moment to celebrate 500 episodes, especially with this feeling like a modern Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and with Tommy being back in the show. It was just awesome to see. Episode 5, Back in Black. I wonder what happens here. The Rangers head out to an invisiportal to save Dr. O from Mezagag's lair when Haley informs them,
Remember, you have to reach a speed of 536 miles per hour upon entry, otherwise you'll never make it past the security wall and probably be ripped to pieces.
She almost let them die. Like, straight up, she was ready to let them leave and everything. But thankfully, she gives them a new set of motorcycles. Kinda sad that the Raptor Riders seem a little unnecessary now, but these are sick too. Motorcycles and battleizers are my favorite things that Bandai America used to force into these shows back in the day, so it gets a pass. These are 1000% my favorite bikes out of all of Power Rangers. The stylized crocodile mouth is just dope. It's a shame we never got them in the Lightning Collection, to be honest. There's an amazing fight with them riding on them too. Kamen Rider doesn't even do motorcycle fights like this really anymore, and I really want to commend the showrunners and stunt choreographers and just the filming crew in general. There's so much American footage in this episode with these bikes. They also have this fight inside of Mezagag's base later in the episode, and it's just a great example of how amazing the American film crew can be when you allow them to do things without solely relying on Sentai footage. Like, the bike scene is so cool for obvious reasons, but I always love indoor fight scenes too. I imagine they're harder to film because of this tighter space. Is this over? There's only 3 episodes on this? Oh man, is there an episode of Ninja Storm on here? What the fuck? Oh, whatever. The Rangers enter the base.
Good guys always win.
I suppose that all depends on who you believe the good guys to be.
This is a really interesting line because I think it's the first time potentially in Power Rangers history where things aren't deemed as so black and white. Like, so often bad guys are just bad in these shows for the sake of being bad. Rita and Zed and whoever else was in that group literally used to call themselves the United Alliance of Evil. Mezagag has an ambition that seems entirely just to him. It's to revert the world back to the Jurassic period, bringing back the dinosaurs. Which I don't really get, but pop off, King. After rescuing Tommy, the Rangers want to have a little chat about his video diary.
We need to talk.
You guys have to get the fuck out of here. Mezagag is right outside of this door, and he's trying to kill you. Stop. So they go through another invisiportal, now with Tommy, as he brings the stone with the power source inside with him. And he actually uses it to deflect a blast from Zeltrax. But when the explosion settles, it appears as though Tommy was not able to survive the blast. And we cut to a commercial break. We come back to see Tommy's fine. Inside the rock was the black dino gem, and it gave him the power of invisibility. I don't think that really has anything to do with this character. I literally think they just chose that so they could have this scene for dramatic effect. Turns out he's already had a morpher prepped, which he clarifies later in the episode's epilogue. And he morphs into the black Dino Thunder Ranger. Black and gold makes for a beautiful suit. I never really understood the handle on top of the helmet, but I think it adds character. A fight breaks out, and this is the first of many fights between Tommy and Zeltrax. They have some crazy beef. We don't really know what it is yet, but they'll get into it. We also discover that the Brachiozord was awakened now that Tommy has bonded with the Black Dino Gem. Inside it is also the Cephalozord. I don't really know how they got this guy, or why he's just chilling in the Brachiozord's backpack already like that. But we're just going to add that to the list too. Tommy being a ranger again was obviously going to happen at some point, and I'm happy that he's black this time instead of red. I feel like it would have been easy for the writers to try to force him into that red slot, but the fact that the Sentai had this mentor ranger already makes it such a perfect fit. Also, I know I mentioned earlier there not being too much Sentai footage in this episode, but the last 5 to 6 minutes of this is actually kind of filled with it. And you know, I rewatched some of these episodes again while writing the script in 2x speed, and this was probably the first time in my life that I ever noticed how dramatically different the background can be in some shots compared to others. Obviously, this is a bunch of shit that they Frankenstein together in the editing room, and I would say right now that I'm upset with myself for never noticing this as a kid, but I've also rewatched a lot of these the way God intended, which is on my CRT, and honestly, I can see why I didn't notice, because like you can't. You can see that. You can't tell what the fuck's going on there. The episode ends with Tommy stating that he now needs to buy more black clothing now that he's a Black Ranger. Seems like a fun throwaway line, but ironically, up to this point in the season, he's only been seen wearing green, white, and red, which are all colors that he's donned previously in other shows, which is a really cool detail. I know Power Rangers really isn't known for storytelling, but I do want to mention how nicely the past 5 episodes flow into each other to create like a really full cohesive narrative. That was something that I really applauded Cosmic Fury for, because I honestly didn't think that that was a thing that Power Rangers ever really did, having 10 episodes that are just sort of flow one into the next. But I guess I'm wrong. From what I remember, this show was really episodic as a kid, but the fact that these 5 episodes flow so well together, and I'm gonna be honest, now that I'm filming this after watching the show, a lot of this season ties together really well, and I don't remember that being the case. And while I can see some people calling episode 3 filler since it's just a Connor focus episode, I would argue that it's necessary development for his character that needed to happen in the beginning of the show, not to mention the events in that episode volley us up for episodes 4 and 5, so I definitely would count it as being important. On to episode 6, it opens with everyone at the cyber cafe listening to Kira sing one of her songs, including Trent, who actually gets the opening shot. After her set, Kira joins the rest of the group and everyone talks about how much they like her music. And the conversation turns to a pop artist named Kylie Styles.
All you hear on the radio is that pop garbage.
Holy shit, that was the most boomer thing Tommy has ever said. And I guess that makes sense. He is much older now. Everyone is pretty in character during this scene. Connor says he's a fan of the pop star. Ethan, in his normal sarcastic way, calls him out for just thinking that she's hot. And we find that she's in town promoting her new album. Trent,
Well, I was listening and I think you rock.
is in love with Kira. All the Rangers' characteristics kind of fall into some normal sort of high school archetype, right? The jock, the nerd, the singer, even the mentor, teacher. Trent, I guess, is a soft boy, and that's honestly the only way I can really define him. He's like a soy boy, nepo baby, art lobby kid that just kind of hangs around everyone else and is really chill, and low-key doesn't give a fuck. Kira mentions that she actually knew Kylie growing up and no one believes her.
No matter what these two think, I believe in Kira.
Bro, he is so supportive of these goddamn kids. That was the sweetest thing he could have possibly said there. The conversation is interrupted when Trent's dad enters the cafe, and Tommy notices that it's Anton Mercer. We discover that he was on the island with Tommy when it exploded in episode 1, which is why he's so surprised to see him here. The two are working on experiments together, researching dinosaur DNA, and Tommy mentions how that's led to the monster attacks that are happening today. And Tommy wonders why Anton Mercer hasn't bothered to contact him after all of that. Mercer kind of just brushes him off, stating that he was looking for a fresh start. And this is one of those scenes I was briefly mentioning earlier that feels like it's written like a TV drama. Again, the show is produced drastically different compared to some of the other shows in the 90s. I don't know, it feels very tense here. And I don't remember Power Rangers ever making me feel tense. Connor goes to visit Kylie with Kira after calling her out for not knowing her earlier in the episode, and we discover that Kylie's actually a piece of shit. Like, she acknowledges that she knows Kira, but says some things that are just rude as hell.
Kira tell you that she and I used to sing together? Wasn't anything professional, just a silly teen angst stuff.
They're interrupted by Cassidy and Devin, and shortly after this, there's a monster attack that turns Kylie, Cassidy, and Devin into geriatrics.
Oh, great.
It's hard enough being a woman in this profession. Now I have to fight ageism too.
Dude, I feel like kids would not get that joke. I do want to mention that the show is really tightly written when it comes to comedy. Even the little quips that the Rangers make during fights just seem so much better than normal. And I really want to say that's not nostalgia talking, or at least I hope so. Of course, the episode ends with everything turning back to normal after the monster is defeated. And I gotta say, this is another banger. We got some cool insight into Kira's character, her history with Kylie and creating music, as well as we learning the lesson of what it means to be a good friend, or whatever Kylie learned. Beauty fades. We're all gonna be old, all right? But I would regret to mention that in this last scene, Kira is wearing a fedora. It's giving Disney Channel DCOM, but I would say it doesn't take away from my overall enjoyment of the show. For now. While this is filler by definition, it's not like nothing happens here, really, especially since we learn more about Trent, Tommy, and Anton Mercer. Dino Thunder is great at drip feeding important plot details into episodes that seem like they would just be filler. But this next episode is the first one that I would call outright filler, but it's not a bad thing because it's still fun to watch. Mezagag has a plan to divide and conquer the Rangers, as Ethan is obsessed with a new video game that's offering a prize to whoever beats it the fastest. And my man is obsessed to the point where he stays at the cyber cafe after hours and skips out on Ranger practice. I assume he hasn't showered either. So Mezagag singles him out with a monster that traps him inside the game along with Cassidy and Devin. They just end up places, man. That's kind of their shtick a lot of the time, is they just fall into situations. I should also mention that they're dressed like that because Cassidy's prepping for the school play. It just so happens to be that this episode revolves around a Wizard 101 looking ripoff. Inside the game, we discover the foot soldiers they used in the Sentai series. I forgot to mention this earlier, but the Tyrannodrones are a solely American creation. As the battle escalates, Connor is physically thrown into the computer, like physically his body hits the computer. Like, he's not digitized like the other three. Like, he lands onto the computer, you know what I mean? And the impact of that releases everyone from inside. I don't know how him smacking into the table would undo the monster's magic spell. We could just throw that on the list, though. But freeing everyone included the Sentai foot soldiers, which this show calls the Triptoids, that are now going to be a regular part of this series from here on out, allowing them to use more Sentai footage. While this is the most fillery thus far, I would say that it's cool to get an Ethan focus episode, considering how everyone else has gotten one at this point, excluding Trent, I guess, but I don't really think he's even part of the main cast yet. But there are also a lot of good character moments, like Dr. O giving Ethan a stern talking to about skipping practice and the importance of training when it comes to being a ranger, or this moment.
Got a big one for you. Be really careful.
Episode 8 opens with a Zord fight, which shows off how far the Rangers have grown and how fighting monsters is now just a part of their day-to-day routine. And surprisingly, this is a Trent focus episode, which I kind of set up earlier. I wasn't really expecting that to work out that way. It's actually really cool. Even though he isn't like a ranger yet, he's still around and they're going out of their way to give him focus and development episodes. And they really didn't have to do that. He's busy working at the cyber cafe when his father stops by to pick him up. Trent explains that he can't just leave in the middle of his shift, and his father tells him that this job isn't really good for him.
Look, son, I don't mean this to sound elitist. Don't you think a managerial position would suit you better?
I'm sorry, but every establishment that's run by a teenage manager or even a person in their 20s is typically a shit show. I was a manager of an ice cream parlor during my first 2 years in college, and I'm shocked that none of my actions were ever questioned in a court of law, if I'm being honest. I used to play a game with my coworkers, or who were really just my friends that I hired, where we would throw scissors. We would go in the back and we would throw scissors. They were broken scissors. Do I have scissors? I don't have scissors, but imagine this is a scissor. We would throw scissors at empty boxes, and it would like land in the box, kind of like throwing axes, and no one in upper management found out or even cared. And I was a terrible manager. I literally let everyone sit on their phone most of the day. There was one weekend where I literally watched the entirety of SSS Gridman in 2 shifts. Dr. O ends up bringing Trent home after declining Mercer's ride earlier in the episode, and he mentions how, after working with Mercer for so many years, he never mentioned how he had any kids. Trent explains how Mercer adopted him after his parents passed away. Mercer had worked with them during a fossil dig, and the tunnel had collapsed on them. Zeltrax sends a monster after Dr. O because he's still hell-bent on getting revenge for something, even though no one knows what that is, including Tommy. Trent attempts to help fight the monsters too, which is a hella rangerly activity, even if he doesn't have a morpher yet. When Trent gets home, he asks Mercer about his past with Dr. O, and the conversation finds itself around the cyber cafe, where Mercer reveals his plan to buy the lot the cyber cafe is on to take over and make Trent the manager. In the next scene, Trent, Dr. O, and Ethan go to City Hall to block Mercer from purchasing the cafe. They meet up with Councilwoman Sanchez and save her from a monster attack, which gives them leverage to block Mercer from purchasing the cafe. And there's a whole speech about how important it is for the community to have a safe space for children to go after school and stuff, and yeah, it's nice. Back at the Mercer household, Trent discovers an invisiportal, and the episode ends with him leaving one in front of the cyber cafe. In the next episode, we find Trent in his dad's office, attempting to find another invisiportal, and they have this dramatic-ass conversation.
Can I help you with something?
There's some weird stuff going on here, Dad.
It's crazy how much the tone drops whenever Anton Mercer is on screen. It's almost like an entirely different show sometimes. This episode sees the Rangers visiting a fossil dig on a school field trip with Dr. O. Elsa, or Principal Randall, joins them. They discover a power egg there and try to take it back to the school, but a group of Tyrannodrones show up before they can do so. I don't know why I'm able to recall watching this episode specifically in such vivid detail. Like, this is one of the most memorable fight scenes in my head for whatever reason. It turns out during the fight, Elsa had swapped out the power egg with a duplicate, and she takes it back to Mezagag's island to hatch it, releasing the Dimetrozord, which causes some trouble for the Rangers, but Tommy is quickly able to tame it, much like the other Biozords in episode 2. It combines with a Thundersaurus, giving it a saw blade. Come on. There we go. See? I forgot to mention this during the Cephalozord's debut, but something I really like about the auxiliary Zords here is like this motorized gimmick. It doesn't work in this toy specifically, but they can like do stuff like this. It's just a really cool thing that makes the toys stand out from other seasons, since the arm change format is very much inspired from Wild Force previous to this. This episode also tries to set up a love triangle between Tommy, Elsa, and Zeltrax, and it honestly goes nowhere. It would have been cool to see Elsa end up with Tommy, to be honest. I know that's kind of a hot take. Some people, for whatever reason, are even upset with the fact that he ends up with Kat over Kimberly, even though that's very well established in prior seasons. I don't know, it just feels like it would have been a cool place to go with his character. The original character descriptions of the show have the Black Ranger casted as Dr. Edward Payne, implying that there was no plans to have a previous Ranger reprise their role in this season. And it really makes you think how different the Doctor character would be here if they didn't have to hold themselves to previously established Tommy lore. I really think it would have made sense for him to end up with Elsa, if I'm being honest. Not a ton happens in the next episode. An actress from a famous TV show called Ocean Alert is visiting Reefside, and Mezagag sends a shark monster after seeing her film an episode of the show, because A, it's a beach show, and B, because he wants to recruit her for his army after witnessing what he believes to be her saving someone from a shark, stating that she's strong and is a valuable recruitment for him, implying Mezagag doesn't know what television is. And that's probably the biggest revelation in this episode. This super genius mutant dinosaur whatever thing has never seen a television. And I find that kind of hilarious. Trent has plans with Kira after his shift that he has to bail on in order to have more dramatic father-son discussions.
Good. You see, all you have to do is put your mind to it, and you can do anything.
And it's sad because she seems genuinely disappointed that he can't hang out. She was trying to get some squish, my man. And Trent's dad keeps clam jamming. Also, this episode, we see Dr. O looking for another dino egg, and it turns out that it's on the same beach that they're filming Ocean Alert. Inside it is the Stegosaur that acts as a surfboard for the Rangers to use, since the monster of the week is a shark that can summon a tsunami. And this is the only auxiliary Zord that does not make for an arm attachment for the Thundersaurus, and there's good reason for that. The only other thing of importance here is Tommy says this after seeing the shark monster.
Man, I hate shark monsters.
And I was like, damn, there's no way he's talking about a specific monster, right? That'd have to be a crazy deep cut for the writers to do. And I don't imagine JDF just improving that there, right? So I was curious, and I Googled MMPR shark monsters, and I discovered that he seems to actually be talking about a very specific monster in this scene. And I thought, you know, it'd be a cute bit if we ended up side railing the video for just a second to talk about the episode this monster comes from. You know, it'd be funny. Maybe wouldn't take up too much time, since MMPR episodes typically are a little shorter and a little less plot heavy, right? It wouldn't be too much work. But then I discovered that this monster shows up in 5 episodes across multiple seasons. So his first appearance is in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode 56, on Fins and Needles. It opens with Tommy and Jason teaching a karate class at the juice bar, and Zach and Billy are commenting on how great of a team the two make. Rita's hater ass is watching on the moon base, and Goldar recommends sending Slippery Shark to perform his rivalry spell. Why a shark monster specifically has this ability, I have no clue. Tommy and Jason are then seen at a forest.
Yeah, developing that concentration and discipline is gonna help him do a lot better in school.
That has to be the lamest thing Jason has ever said. I don't care if he studies martial arts. That made me want to tie his shoelaces together and shove him in a locker for being a square. I don't even care if that's a valid point. Like, why would you even say that? They're attacked by a group of putties, and what follows has to be the worst choreographed scene in Power Rangers history. Like, did that whole sequence really deserve a slow-mo bit? During this scene, the two are possessed by Slippery Shark's spell, and they have this pretty intense argument.
I'm sick of taking orders from you. If you don't like it, take a hike. The Power Rangers were doing just fine before you showed up.
Like, that was actually kind of crazy. The two are now beefing it at school when Bulk and Skull provoke them to start fighting in the hallways, but they're interrupted by Miss fucking Appleby, the best character in Power Rangers history. She was around for 5 seasons. That's more than Jason, Rocky, and Billy. She is the GOAT. Bulk and Skull are now selling tickets to a fight between the two that will be held at the juice bar.
Yo, can I get 20 tickets, man?
He absolutely did not say that. I don't want to like go into detail, but like this feels racially motivated. Does that make sense? Tommy and Jason are standing in the juice bar grunting at each other when Zach tries to break them up. They tell him to buzz off, and what is this outfit? What weather are you dressed for? What type of occasion would even call for this? The fight is interrupted by a call from Alpha and Zordon, and as the Rangers are looking into the viewing globe, Zordon and Alpha describe the shark monster's abilities.
I'm certainly glad I got over my fear of fish.
Billy is referring to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, Episode 43, Something Fishy. Not to be confused with Season 19, Episode 4 of Power Rangers Samurai, titled the exact same thing. That, ironically, also has to do with the Ranger being afraid of fish, and I would review that episode of Power Rangers Samurai as well, but this video is specifically about Slippery Shark, so reviewing an episode from Samurai kinda just seems like a total waste of time. In this episode, the Rangers are excited to go scuba diving, but Billy won't go because he's afraid of fish, and Kimberly plans on not going because she doesn't want to ruin her hair. Also, the two have plans to have a picnic at the park on the same day. I'm not saying that Kimberly is cheating on Tommy or that there's like an implied romance between these two. I just find it really interesting that the two are planning to hang out alone in an episode after Green with Evil, where Tommy just isn't around and everyone else decides to go scuba diving. Billy just so happens to suddenly be afraid of fish. even though he ends up porking one in Zeo. It actually turns out Billy got bit by a fish when he was a child, and that's why he's afraid of them today. It also turns out that Jason is a certified scuba diving instructor and a black belt, yet he still doesn't have a high school diploma. I don't know, man. I'm just a loser. While the three are scuba diving, Billy and Kimberly are left to take care of the monster of the week. Words cannot describe the number of thoughts I had during that sequence of events. Why didn't he just run to the lunchbox? He did not need to do all of this. Rita casts a spell exasperating Billy's fear of fish. Anyways, Billy gets over his fear of fish, they defeat the monster, and Billy goes fishing in the end. Slippery Shark. Zordon explains to Jason and Tommy that they were brainwashed and need to put their beef aside to work together to destroy this shark monster. After hearing this, the two decide to make a competition out of it.
If I destroy the shark, I take over as leader of the Power Rangers. And if I get it first, you turn in your power coin. Fine!
You don't even have to do that, man. He'll just quit eventually and go join a peace conference. You just have to wait. The two continue to beef it, even in Sentai footage, or maybe this is Ju 2 footage, I don't really know. And watching them trying to have a full conversation while in suit is kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie.
That's it, Tommy! I've had it with you! Oh yeah? I'm the leader, I'll call the shots!
And they get attacked again.
This shark is gonna make history out of us if we don't start working together. What do you say, bro? I'm in, buddy.
And that's literally all it took to break the spell. I'm not even sure it's broken, actually, to be honest. I just think they just got sick of getting their asses kicked. They trap him in a net. Where did that net come from? I don't really know. I would say let's add it to the list, but this is what is this about? Anyways, they defeat the monster. The two go back to teaching their karate class and everyone's friends again. Slippery Shark appears again in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, Episode 15, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Park. It opens with Richie and Curtis, two characters specifically created with the intention of letting the other Rangers know that they are very easily replaceable. Curtis has a solo in the jazz concert tomorrow, and he asks Zach if he could use their uncle's trumpet in the show. Zed sends the putties to cast a spell on the trumpet, turning it into a monster that causes the Rangers to hallucinate that they've run into 7 monsters that they've already fought in previous episodes. Slippery Shark is one of those monsters. Interesting thing about this scene is that this is one of those episodes where Zach, Jason, and Trini's actors were around to film the actual episode, but weren't around to do the ADR sessions after. So you're left with these terrible impressions of the three.
Man, where are they coming from?
I'm pretty sure Trini doesn't even talk in this episode, if I'm being honest. It's really insane how you just don't notice that type of stuff when you're a kid. Slippery Shark also appears in Season 2, Episode 38 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, A Real Fish Story. In this episode, Rocky is working as a lifeguard at the local beach, and a kid won't go into the ocean because he's afraid of a monster attack, which is totally justifiable considering he lives in Angel fucking Grove. Rocky explains to the kid that he's never seen a monster at the beach, so he has nothing to worry about, which is blatant gaslighting because I'm certain there have been monsters on the beach. But I don't want to go into another episode. Because this is about Slippery Shark, alright? Zed overhears this and decides to bring back every underwater monster the Rangers have ever faced, just because Rocky said that and he's petty. One of these monsters is Slippery Shark, and another one of those monsters is the one that Billy was afraid of.
I know just how he feels. You know, there was a time where I went to go swimming myself.
Oh shit. So it's like canon that Billy's terrified of the ocean. I would have never realized that if I didn't watch these episodes back to back. This is actually core development for him, because without this, he would have never gone to Aquitar and fuck a fish. They also reused the footage of Jason, Trini, and Zach scuba diving during the Billy episode, but now we're supposed to assume that it's Tommy, Adam, and Kimberly. Slippery Shark shows up again in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3, Episode 31, Master Vile and the Metallic Armor, Part 3. Part 1 is our introduction to Master Vile, Rita Repulsa's father and the ruler of the M51 galaxy. He creates a monster able to drain the Rangers of the power, prompting the Rangers to create the metallic armor to stop him. In Part 2, the monster is still able to drain the Rangers of their power even with the metallic armor, kind of feels pointless now, and the villains end up capturing all of their Zords. In this episode, the Power Rangers seem very close to being defeated, and Master Vile is throwing an end of the world party. Slippery Shark is seen in attendance at the front entrance. The final appearance of Slippery Shark, the character, is in Power Rangers in Space, Season 6, Episode 42, Countdown to Destruction. To give context to that, we will have to go over all of Power Rangers in Space, as well as most likely the second half of Turbo. Probably should go over the movie for good measure. All right, he's just one of the monsters that invades the Phantom Rangers home planet. He's not even there for like half a second, okay? Also, in Power Rangers Turbo Episode 6, Justin has entered a derby car race, which is a thing that I think they used to just do in the 90s. There is a derby car named Slippery Shark, though I'm not sure if this reference is intentional, but we do see Elgar sparring with what looks to be the head of Slippery Shark in that same episode, though it is never confirmed to be him. And with this, we have gone over the entire history of my favorite Mighty Morphin Power Rangers villain, Slippery Shark. This is supposed to be about Dino Thunder. Fuck! Power Rangers Dino Thunder Episode 11. What might be my first ever Power Rangers episode. White Thunder Part 1. I'm surprised it took us this long to get here. It begins with a brief recap of Trent's story thus far, and he's found sleeping at the cyber cafe in an attempt to hide his drawings from his father as he disapproves of his art. We then see Elsa at a forest blasting, I don't know, sound waves at a statue. Tommy sees her and goes to investigate. Meanwhile, Cassidy and Devin are applying for a reporting job at the local news station. The news director there refuses to hire them because they lack experience and probably because they're children. But Cassidy says that she can get them a story on the identities of the Rangers by EOD. Trent is having another dramatic ass conversation with Anton Mercer about his future and how as his adoptive father he only wants what's best for him and blah blah blah. During the conversation, Anton Mercer becomes lightheaded and is in visual distress, where he then enters an invisiportal after Trent leaves the room, but Trent still is able to see him doing this. We then have this scene of Elsa trying to extract a gem from this meteorite. Trent enters the invisiportal after his father finding a white light. As he walks towards it, he discovers that it's emitting from a metallic band. Once he's in front of it, it snaps to his wrist, and Trent's mind is flooded with a ton of Sentai footage. We then see him running outside in a panic and exiting through an invisiportal. Discovering the gem is missing, Elsa and Zeltrax create a monster to find whoever stole it. The other Rangers encounter this monster, who claims that he's looking for something in basic white. Then, a blur flashes over the screen, attacking the monster. The Rangers decide to chase after it, where they discover my favorite suit in Power Rangers history. I would try to go into detail about just why I love it so much, but I feel like that doesn't need to be explained here. He absolutely rocks the shit out of them twice in this episode, talking smack the entire time.
Too easy.
His shit-talking actually angers Ethan and Kira to the point where they get their asses handed to them even harder out of distress. Back at the base, the Rangers are discouraged after losing to the evil White Ranger, as Tommy tries to encourage them. Cassidy and Devin end up seeing the White Ranger and follow after him. After turning the corner and losing the two, the White Ranger collapses to the ground, unmorphing and revealing that it's actually Trent. Oh my god! Whoa, who would have it? Who thought? Who knew? Whoa, wow. Part 2 begins with the White Ranger attempting to hatch a dino egg. Cassidy and Devin bought a DVD of the White Ranger unmorphing from a child in grammar school. Sucker! This unironically has to be one of the most iconic moments in Power Rangers history. This child twirling around for 3 seconds and calling Cassidy and Devin a sucker has been burned into my memory since childhood. This is a canon event for me that has had a lasting impact on my core identity and honestly my worldview. Trent arrives late to work and is noticeably unwell. He passes out and Haley excuses him for the day. I don't know if this is a valid complaint or if I just hate seeing strong independent women, but I really hate how the writers felt this need to make Haley say something sarcastic every time she's seen interacting with anyone.
I have a strict glassware budget I have to adhere to. I can't afford any more breakage today.
It just comes off rude, especially considering how Trent is like very clearly unwell here. The actress does do her best with it though, and you genuinely feel as though she does care about Trent, I guess. Dr. O discovers 2 dino eggs on his security cameras, and the 4 Rangers split up into teams to investigate. Cassidy and Devin run into the kid that sold them the DVD, and I don't know what happened to his audio, but this is what he sounds like.
But I'm just a kid, and I really do have a tape of the White Ranger. If you let me go, I'll go home, get it for you, and meet you here later.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, it's actually dubbed really well. That's just not a child though, unfortunately. That's a demon woman trapped inside of a 12-year-old boy, if anything. He sounds like he should be picking up his kids from field hockey practice in his Hyundai Palisade. Connor and Kira find the White Ranger charging a dino egg, and as they're fighting him, Elsa creates a giant monster to attack the city. This causes Connor and Kira to leave the White Ranger in order to use the Megazord. Ethan and Dr. O arrive at the docks to find the Parasword Zord throwing up gang signs. The main trio summon the Thundersaurus to take on the giant monster, and Tommy leaves to take care of the White Ranger. While there, he's interrupted by Zeltrax. The monster is destroyed, and Zeltrax leaves the scene only for the White Ranger to have just enough time to hatch his dino egg. This is interrupted by Cassidy and Devin getting jumped in an alleyway by the youths of our nation. Back to the actual show, the Rangers are shocked to see the White Ranger and his newly hatched Dragozord. It's supposed to be, excuse my language,
I am very excited to share with you these facts on
Tutenhawken, which from what I understand is just a bigger pterodactyl. I don't know why they call it the Dragozord outside of it potentially being a reference to the Dragonzord, since Trent is another evil 6th kind of ranger, but this looks nothing like a dragon, so I don't know. In the next episode, the Dragozord flaps its wings and begins to fuck up Wreathside, which has some beautiful miniature work, can I just say that. Dr. O activates the Stegozord when Trent takes it over and combines it with the Dragozord, creating his own Megazord and knocking them out of theirs.
Since when do they have bad Power Rangers?
Do you even know who your teacher is? This has to be one of my favorite Megazords in Power Rangers history. It having a tail and these claws adds so much to that evil, monstrous, prehistoric vibe that it's going for. Thankfully, Tommy is able to regain control of the Stegozord, knocking the White Ranger out of it. Devin discovers the White Ranger in the middle of unmorphing in an alleyway, and he attempts to get footage of this when he knocks himself out by hitting his head on a pipe. But the camera is still recording. Even when he fucks up, Devin is still not doing that bad, I'm not gonna lie. The Rangers are back at the base complaining. Tommy explains how there are going to be days like this.
Whatever happened to the glasses half full?
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's empty. That's when the qualities that made you guys Rangers become most important.
And that's real as hell. This is why Tommy is such a good mentor, man, because not only has he been through stuff like this before, but he never sugarcoats it to these guys because he genuinely understands how it feels. He tells them that they need to just go have fun and enjoy their hobbies. Once they leave, he says that this is only the beginning. While playing soccer, Connor finds Trent and he's visibly ill. Trent tells him to stay away, but Connor chases after him when he finds himself in a quarry with the White Ranger, challenging him to a fist fight. And while I do like this scene, as an adult, I feel weird watching it because I know that this was done because there's footage of the Red and White Ranger fighting in another show where they probably had a more serious rivalry than whatever is going on here. I haven't seen Abaranger in full, but whatever beef is between Trent and Connor really just boils down to this.
Why do we have to fight at all?
You're good, I'm evil. It's a pretty simple concept.
And that really doesn't hold much weight for me. Like, this is cool, but I just wish there was something deeper to their fighting. Like, I'm enjoying the fight, but I feel like I'm missing something that's integral to the plot, even though what's missing is from an entirely different show. Does that make sense? Connor calls for backup, and at the same time, Mezagag summons a giant monster. Dr. O calls up the auxiliary Zords, and it's actually really cool to see them fight on their own. While the Brachiozord is Tommy's main Zord, that's undeniable. It really can't do anything on its own outside of just bring other Zords into the battle. So it's really cool that Tommy sort of gets to control the rest of them, since he's like kind of like the gatekeeper of all the Zords, if that makes sense. During Connor's fight with Trent, we see him go Super Dino mode for the first time. In high key, I really feel like they did this earlier in the show, but I guess they didn't. It's weird. I really feel like Super Dino mode was just like always around, you know? I don't know. Anyways, that gives him the ability to take down the White Ranger for a brief moment where he pretends to die, but immediately gets back up and continues to kick Connor's ass. Mezagag interrupts their fight and offers the White Ranger a spot on his team if he helps him defeat the rest of the Power Rangers. The White Ranger rejects this offer and runs away. Connor is still on the ground when Zeltrax offers to finish him off. Mezagag says they should spare him since the White Ranger seems to have a fascination with Connor. Even though, like I said, there's literally nothing to that fascination.
You're good, I'm evil. It's a pretty simple concept.
Like I said, alright, I love this show. And I actually really enjoy the idea of the White Ranger just being this mindless killing machine that's controlled by an evil dino gem. So it's just weird that they seem to want to make any of the conflict deeper than it actually is, when it really just doesn't have to be. We then cut to the White Ranger actually destroying the monster of the week, and I really like him being this rogue third party just messing up everyone's business. Back at the Cyber Cafe, Devin informs Cassidy that he actually got the White Ranger unmorphing on tape, but he hasn't looked at it yet, and he forgot it at his house.
Devin, you get my hopes up one more time, and I swear.
Yo, I don't know what kind of person Devin is, but judging by his reaction, he's either really intimidated or kind of turned on. This moment made me realize that I think Devin might have a shame kink. Tommy goes back to the warehouse to retrieve the fossil finder when he discovers a sick Trent who suddenly morphs into the White Ranger. They're forced to fight, and right as Tommy calls Haley to inform them who the White Ranger is, Trent fossilizes him in amber, concluding the White Thunder 3-parter. This is an excellent introduction to an evil ranger, and it happens at the perfect time in the show. Like I said, Dino Thunder actually has a lot less filler than you really think it would have, and we're about 15 episodes in, and the story is still going really strong. Trent's arc is one of my favorites in Power Rangers history. I feel like my man just is in a constant state of struggle, and like I said, Trent is just like this cute little soft boy. So like that acts as this perfect contrast to the White Ranger just being this evil killing machine. In episode 14, the Rangers are unable to get Tommy out of the amber. Both the Rangers and Mezagag's army are now in search of the White Ranger. All the while, Trent is roaming the streets, tweaking out as he begins to remember everything he's done as the White Ranger. Elsa comes up with a device to track the White Dino Gem, and the Rangers go to Haley's to see if she has any updates.
I mean, it's not like the White Ranger is just gonna walk in here.
Hey, Trent.
That's just funny. Trent ends up quitting his job at the Cyber Cafe, surprising everyone, and Kira attempts to talk to him, and you can really tell that Trent is struggling with something, and it looks like he's about to tell her when Cassidy barges through the door and informs everyone that she has a tape of the White Ranger unmorphing. Everyone waits in anticipation. Trent even damn near shits his pants, but it turns out Devin loaned the camera to his sister, and Trent suddenly disappears. Shortly thereafter in the episode, we see a confrontation between the White Ranger, Mezagag's generals, and the other Rangers. During this fight, Kira and the others just go full Super Dino mode out of nowhere. I guess they could just all do that now, which is pretty sick. The White Ranger damages Kira, forcing her to unmorph, and Trent is about to finish her off, but he can't force himself to once he realizes that it's her. Later, Kira and Trent meet up at the lake when Trent shows her a picture he drew of the White Ranger, revealing his secret identity. Kira flips out until Trent explains that he's not able to control his actions when morphed. She tells him that she's going to get Connor and Ethan, revealing their identities to him as well, and leaves. But before she's able to return, he's kidnapped by the Tyrannodrones. Mezagag talks to Trent and is entertained by the fact that he's Anton Mercer's son. He tells him that eventually the gem will take over and that it's only a matter of time. Trent morphs and is able to escape. Back at Reefside, he summons his Megazord and the Rangers are ready to take him on. But Connor warns Kira that she has to be ready to do anything in order to take down Trent.
We've got to do whatever it takes to stop Trent. You know that, right?
And it's crazy that Connor legitimately considered killing him here. Like, obviously they don't outright say that, but it's heavily implied that Kira has to be ready to take Trent's life. And Connor showing great signs as a leader considering Dr. O's absence. He's really like one of the most underrated Red Rangers of all time. And I really think he's just overshadowed by the fact that both Tommy and Trent are just like standout characters in this season. But we'll have more about that conversation later. They summon the Megazord, and Haley gives them access to a new Dinozord, the Ankylozord, an orange ankylosaurus that acts as a second drill and shield for the Thundersaurus. After the battle, Trent finds Kira back at the same lake, and he tells her that he has to go away, fearing what he may do once the gem fully takes over. He is so dramatic here, but I do love this scene, because you could really just like feel how badly Kira wants to help him, but like Trent is just so scared to let her in. He's like the Hulk, dude. You know like that scene where they parody in Family Guy where Stewie's like walking off with that bag over his shoulder. I just hit the desk. That's the same sort of vibes that I'm getting here. In the next episode, Trent is wandering throughout the woods trying to get away from Reefside when he runs into Cassidy and Devin looking for the White Ranger.
Nearly every evil anti-hero lives somewhere in a secluded cave or somewhere outside the city.
I don't know what she's referencing, but I think it's funny that she actually ended up finding Trent this way.
Hold it there, White Ranger!
We see the Rangers hanging out, enjoying their typical hobbies at the base, being regular old teenagers, and Connor even tells Ethan to touch grass at one point.
Yeah, there's this great new thing called the outdoors. You might want to check it out.
Anyways, the whole episode is about this meteorite that flips everyone's personalities. So now Ethan's a jock, and Connor's a nerd, and Kira's preppy, and Cassidy's a dork, and Devin is cool. I guess. I don't even think that was cool for like the early 2000s. Like, do kids even get that reference? I'm just gonna add this to the list. Anyways, they use the meteorite to remove Dr. O from the amber, but it turns out that he's unable to demorph.
I said, power down!
For those of you who don't know, JDF was a family man, so during the production of Dino Thunder, he wanted to be able to like go see his kids at some points throughout the year. So the show's going to do a bunch of things to sort of keep him offset for a little bit in order to achieve this. And that's going to work out to like varying degrees of success. But, you know, I do respect the fact that my man made time to see his kids. In the next episode, Trent is baiting out the Rangers with a Megazord battle to steal 2 of their Dinozords. Back at the base, Connor is fed up with the White Ranger.
I don't care whose fault it is. We find a way to deal with him, or things are gonna get ugly.
I don't want to keep repeating myself, but this is such great characterization, both with Connor being like this hothead teenager and Tommy just being Tommy Oliver.
I was in his shoes once, and I wouldn't be here today if my friends have given up on me.
The episode revolves around the White Ranger teaming up with Mezagag to trick the Rangers so he can get a new bike. On a walk to school, Trent starts another fight with Connor, and Zeltrax interrupts with a monster that they pretend to use to turn Trent back into a good guy. And Trent invites the Rangers to a warehouse to give them back their Zords and give them a new bike. Ethan is excited to see it, but Dr. O tells him that he should probably be the one to test it out.
Good work. 12-stroke engine?
Yeah, sure is.
They don't make 12-stroke engines, Trent.
I don't know why this clip was so memorable as a kid. I think it's because, like, I genuinely didn't know what the normal number of strokes an engine is supposed to have. I still don't think I know that, to be honest. Anyways, there's some amazing bike fights in this episode on all ends. Trent ends up double-crossing Mezagag again by destroying his own monster, and it ends with Trent witnessing Mezagag turning back into Anton Mercer, revealing Mercer's secret to both his son and the audience. I'm not sure if that was obvious. I don't know if I outright said that Mercer was supposed to be Mezagag, but I feel like that was like really obvious. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've watched this so many times now. Episode 17, Trent is called to the principal's office due to literally everyone being worried about him, and he returns to biology class to discover that his father, Anton Mercer, is substituting for Dr. O. Mercer takes everyone to a field trip to the museum from episode 1. Kira's even freaked out by that T-Rex statue from before.
The thing just gives me a creepy vibe. It's like it moved.
While there, she's brainwashed by a monster that was created by Mercer and Tommy. Don't know why Tommy decided that he needed to start making his own monsters, especially considering his past, but this is the present we live in. The monster is comprised of bones, and it forces Kira to steal the last remaining bone from Dr. O in order to be at full power. This was foreshadowed earlier in the episode when she was helping Dr. O inventory stuff at the lab, and she was told specifically to never touch it. In this episode, we actually see an incomplete Megazord, since they're forced to summon it without Kira. And I always love when they do like shit like this in the show, because the toy can just do this stuff. You really don't need the pterodactyl at all. And this is something that they didn't have to replicate in the show, but I just think it's neat that they bothered to anyways. The episode ends with Anton Mercer once again turning into Mezagag, but this time they decide to traumatize the audience by like making it really scary to watch.
You are weak, Anton.
We move on to episode 18, Bully for Ethan. That's it. That's literally what this episode is about. Ethan has a bully at school that's picking on him. Something cool about this episode is that the bully is played by Dwayne Cameron, who would later go on to portray the Mercury Ranger in Operation Overdrive. And another really cool thing about this episode is Kira continuing to help Dr. O inventory stuff at the lab. And while there's all these like files and bins and stuff labeled with different Sentai emblems. Just for reference, there is a folder bearing a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers lightning bolt, a folder bin with the upside down emblem from Live Man, a show that we know very well on the channel, another folder bin with the emblem from Changeman, or the Blitz Rangers, depending on who's asking, a folder bin with the emblem from Maskman, or the Lightning Rangers, one of the Lost Galaxy Rangers emblem, a drawer having the crest emblem from Die Ranger, or the Squadron Rangers, one bearing the Lightspeed Rescue emblem, a drawer with an upside down chest emblem from Goggle 5, another folder with the Flashman or Prism Rangers, and one more with the 5-man or Supersonic Rangers emblem. What's kind of cool is that a lot of these Rangers would go on to show up in Super Megaforce and the comics, so you could kind of argue that those Sentai exclusive changes in Super Megaforce were actually always meant to be canon with Dino Thunder in mind. I personally think it was just meant to be a really cool Easter egg for fans to like sort of just point at and think, oh, what if, imagine, but like never meant to be thought too hard about. But now that Super Megaforce exists and like the comics having a lot more, introducing a lot more with these suits, I guess retroactively it's now this really cool detail and I guess like foreshadowing and like world building. We saw that in episode 4 Tommy was keeping tabs on different Ranger teams, so maybe these are just Ranger teams that he knows about but like not enough to comment on during the little documentary series that he made. It could be because they were Rangers before he became one, or maybe they existed on other planets. It's really up to you, however you want to interpret it. We also see photos of the MMPR cast and Tommy as the White Stranger. Kira even commenting on his long hair.
Nice hair.
Hey, it was in style back then.
More importantly, we see Tommy poorly photoshopped on a photo with Mercer and someone Tommy introduces to us as Terrence Smith, or Smitty. Apparently, Tommy and Smitty were up for the same job at Mercer Industries, and Tommy ended up getting the promotion instead, leading to Smitty getting another job with a different company where he had a terrible accident. In the very next scene, the first thing we hear is Zeltrax.
If we stop the Black Ranger once and for all, the others will be at our mercy.
Towards the end of the episode, Zeltrax reveals that he is Smitty, and that Mezagag found him after his accident and turned him into a cyborg, essentially saving his life. Also, Trent was hanging around Mezagag's base all episode using his invisibility powers. Kinda always annoyed me that him and Tommy have the exact same Dino Gem powers, to be honest. Cause like, especially with it making more sense for Trent's personality, with him kind of being almost like shy or like quiet or more to himself. Like, it would make sense he would want to blend in and stuff. But like Tommy, I don't know. I just really wish they gave Tommy something different. But now that Trent knows that Mezagag is his father, they're cool now. This is lame. Why did I do that? You know who I'm talking about. I don't need to show you. It's just weird. Episode 19, Lost and Found in Translation. In this episode, the main trio watch an episode of their Sentai counterpart, Bakaryu Sentai Abaranger. I personally think that it's a really cute episode, but I was looking at message boards that came out around the time that this premiered in 2004 and 2005, and a lot of people saw it as them making fun of Sentai. And honestly, I can kind of see that, but I feel like the intent here is to show that, like, even though Sentai characters are allowed to swear or like have a scratch or like blood, I guess, on their face, some of the plots of that show are just as goofy as, if not more goofier sometimes, than anything Power Rangers has to offer. And this is something I always thought, to be honest. Like, a lot of people in the West see Sentai as like this dark, crazy, mature, like gritty show compared to like Power Rangers, when in reality they're kind of the exact same, tonally speaking, not in terms of story, but in terms of like the tone of Sentai and Power Rangers. The only difference is that one's Japanese and you can't understand the silly things they're saying as well as the ones in English. I'm not saying that Power Rangers is better than Sentai or that Sentai is better or like anything in that realm. What I'm saying is that these two properties are very similar shows that are almost exactly the same in some instances. So to act like one is blatantly superior to the other, in my opinion, is just like really weird and kind of trivial, because neither could have survived this long without the other. It just seems like a silly debate to me, if I'm being honest. And from what I can tell, this is actually a fairly accurate translation of what happens in Abaranger, which makes it even funnier, to be honest. It's not exact. It's just similar enough, though. They literally do the exact same thing that I do in all of my reaction videos, which is just like watch the show and make jokes. So there's not really much to like talk about besides explaining jokes and like going ha ha. So I figured this is probably going to be a good time to have our first intermission, unless you want to count the slippery shark thing as the first intermission, in which case this is our second intermission. Unlike the intermissions in the Live Man video, I want to use this time to talk about ancillary topics around the show that don't really have a nice place to fit in during the episode recaps. And since we're on the topic, now's as good a time as any to talk about Bakaryu Sentai Abaranger. I thought about watching the entirety of that show before making this video, but then I realized that the whole point of this video is me rediscovering the show that I watched when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I didn't know that Super Sentai even existed. That wasn't until the summer of 2009. So it feels unfair to go back to this show after rewatching a different show that would almost force me to compare the two. And honestly, I think it may be cool to do a different video one day where we actually do talk about Abaranger and all the things that have to do with that. But for now, while I don't want to taint my reintroduction to Dino Thunder, I can't help but know that Abaranger is a show that exists. And I think that it's important to point out some differences that you may or may not notice, knowing that that is the case. So I watched the first 2 episodes of Abaranger along with the Wacker Wilson episode to see how accurate it is, and it really is damn near the same thing. It's almost crazy. The differences are honestly so minor in that episode that they're almost not even worth mentioning. But in the show, all of the dinosaurs are able to talk. They speak full sentences and communicate with the Rangers through their weapons, morphers, and during Megazord battles. They do a pretty good job in Power Rangers of covering this up with like roars and stuff, so you never really notice. Also, None of the characters in this show are teenagers. In fact, Abare Red is a father, and Abare Black is from a parallel universe where dinosaurs never went extinct. And going back to the early drafts of Power Rangers Dino Thunder, it looks like originally they were going to translate that concept over. Some other things, Mezagag, Elsa, Mercer, and the Pteranodrones are all American exclusive creations. Haley does have a counterpart who, ironically enough, is a teenager. I wouldn't really call her a counterpart, but more so just like another girl that hangs out with the Rangers in the Japanese show. She doesn't develop any tech or anything. She, like I said, she just kind of hangs out with them. The White Ranger, from what I understand, stays evil throughout the entire show, except for the last 3 episodes. I don't think he's being mind controlled or anything here. He's just a piece of shit, from what I understand. And instead of the cyber cafe, the Rangers hang out at a curry restaurant that's themed around dinosaurs. I would talk about this in more detail, but like I said, I don't want to watch any more of this show before this video is out. Maybe, again, we'll do a long Abaranger video, kind of like the Live Man video or this, right? Maybe we could do that someday, who knows. But I really wanted to just take a moment and reference some of the big things because I know people will get mad at me if I don't. In fact, I'm sure they already have since this is so far deep in the video. So this whole thing may be pointless, but we just move on to the next episode. Have a fun look at the comments and see if anyone's yelled at me already about Sentai footage or whatever. Episode 20 is about Kira and Devin getting internships at their local TV station. Kira is working on the Funky Fisherman cartoon Cavalade, a show that Ethan loves.
No way, that's my favorite show. It's the Funky Fisherman cartoon show. So grab your gear and we'll all go.
Elsa decides to kidnap the fish mascot of the show.
Get the fish!
What inspired her to do this? I have no clue, personally, so best believe it's just going to go on the list. The only other thing of note in this episode is Trent challenging Zeltrax for the second-in-command spot in Mezagag's army and winning. Episode 21. Ethan now works at the Cyber Cafe since Haley has been short-staffed due to Trent's absence. We cut to Trent training against the Tyrannodrones at the Mercer house, when Anton Mercer decides to have a conversation with Trent about how much he's changed.
That's what Mezagag wants. Look, we share the same mind, but I hate what he's done to you.
We find out that Mezagag was the result of Anton Mercer experimenting with dinosaur DNA on a project that was deemed too dangerous for regular test subjects. While testing it on himself, he poisoned his mind and split his personality into 2, creating Mezagag as an alter ego. Also in this episode, Zeltrax creates a monster that's able to copy the Ranger's weapons and uses it to frame the White Ranger for messing up Mezagag's lab as revenge for what had happened in the last episode. In response to this, Mezagag kidnaps Trent and attempts to destroy him. Thankfully, Mercer is able to regain control just in time to deflect the laser that was pointed at Trent, redirecting the blast into the white dino gem, weakening it. Trent continues to have his powers, but is no longer under control of the evil gem. Mercer tells Trent he now has the choice to do whatever he wants with the power, and suggests that he teams up with the other Rangers. Trent doesn't want to fight against his own father, but decides to follow the path of justice and promises to keep Mercer secret, hoping to find a remedy in the future. Trent enters a battle with the Monster of the Week and the Rangers and goes full Super Dino mode for the first time and ends up getting the finishing blow on this monster, claiming that he's finally free from the Dino Gem's hold. The Rangers are apprehensive to trust him at first, but in the end they accept that he's turned for the best after finding out that he saved Dr. O's life, and they allow him to join the team. Before the episode ends, we discover that Zeltrax used the copy monster's machine to create an evil clone of the White Ranger. The reason for this is mostly Sentai footage. Like I said, the White Ranger's counterpart in the Japanese show is kind of like this roguelike evil character that is almost an antagonist to the Rangers throughout the entirety of the series, so they still have a ton of footage of the main 3 and the Black Ranger fighting the White Ranger, and I guess they just don't want to throw that out. We now move on to episode 22, Triassic Triumph. Trent reflects on his father being Mezagag after Kira mentions how it's nice there's no more secrets between them now. Connor is jealous over Cassidy wanting to interview the foreign exchange student about soccer, who fun fact, is actually the older brother of the actress who plays Dr. K in RPM.
Someone's looking a little more green than red.
That's actually a funny comment because I know a lot of people perceive Connor to be more of a Green Ranger in this series because Tommy's in the picture. So to comment on that for a second, I really want to disagree with that claim. We talked about it earlier and we're going to talk about it again later, but Connor is just like such a good character and he has such a crazy arc. It just makes me sad to like watch that get overlooked time and time again. Zeltrax creates a pterosaur monster based on the White Ranger, and he goes out to attack the Rangers with the clone and the monster. Thankfully, Trent interrupts the battle, confirming that it's not him, which is admittedly a little disappointing. I would have liked if they had at least 1 or 2 maybe episodes of like it being up in the air, where like, are the Rangers able to trust Trent anymore because the clone is doing stuff, and like, you know, I feel like there's a lot of story potential there that they just didn't go for, but I feel like they were probably just done with the evil White Ranger stuff at this point, so the writers are probably just like over it, probably just like keep him in for fights and just sort of move on. Connor continues to be upset with Trent over everything that's happened with the White Ranger, and Dr. O needs help with something and specifically requests that Trent joins him. This is another thing that makes Connor incredibly jealous in this episode. But Dr. O needs Trent's Dino Gem energy to power a shield that is in this waterfall. The pterosaur monster returns, and Connor refuses to call Trent and Dr. O for backup. Turns out that the Mezagag's monster has the Dimetro and Cephalozords that Trent had kidnapped in an earlier episode. Honestly, I forgot that he stole these. You would have figured that, I guess, like he would have given them back after joining the team, but I guess he just left them at the Mercer house. I don't really know. This monster goes on to steal the T-Rex, Tricera, and Pterazords. During the fight, Connor begins to have visions of him holding a shield. He's called to the waterfall where Trent and Dr. O are at and leaps into the air and grabs the shield from the river. Dr. O tells him that the shield was always meant for him.
Only a Ranger in complete sync with the universal dino energy can handle its power.
No clue what the fuck he means by universal dino energy, and they never talk about that again, because what is universal dino energy? Dr. O brings Trent back to the base, adds his black dino gem energy into the shield, and brings it to the battlefield to have Ethan and Kira provide their dino gem energy. With all of his friends' powers instilled into this shield, Connor begins to feel its power and transforms into the Triassic Ranger, which has the ability to bend space-time. I don't know, I'm just gonna add that to the list. Not the fact that it can bend space-time, but like this alone is like the strongest Ranger in the entire series, and we don't talk about that. He bends space-time. Okay, don't feed me that bullshit over, oh, the Super Mega Force Rangers are able to morph into whatever they want, because Connor can literally bend space-time as the Triassic Ranger. Do you understand that? And unless I'm mistaken, there is no Triassic Ranger key, or at least I've never seen one. I don't remember it. So every other claim is just moot, really. It ends with Connor piecing it up with the foreign exchange student from before. Now that Connor believes in himself, because his friends also believe in him. His self-worth came from other people's perception of him, which is a great lesson to teach kids, in my opinion. We move on to episode 23, A Star is Torn. The wiki notes that this episode shares a name with a Simpsons episode that came out a year later that also happens to have the exact same plot, which I personally find really hard to believe, considering no one in The Simpsons has a Mezzodon rover. But I'll let you be the judge of that. The episode's about being true to yourself, or whatever. It doesn't really beat you over the head with the moral, so it's not like sickening. Kira has big news to share, but everyone is busy. Haley left Trent with the cyber cafe while she and Connor are testing the functionality of a new Megazord using the Shield of Triumph. And Ethan made a Tinder.
Would you guys say that I'm A, a chiseled workout fiend, B, a beefy boy toy, C, a walking toothpick, or D, just your average everyday dude?
Kira reveals to Cassidy, who doesn't actually care about what she has to say. She literally just wants to use the computer that Kira's sitting at the cyber cafe. But Kira tells her that she has been signed to a music production company that happens to be run by Kelson Henderson, who went on to play Boom, Phineas, Norg, Flint, a bunch of monsters, mechanic, and crews. He's been in more seasons than JDF, and to me and a lot of other people, Kelson might as well be the face of this franchise. He's the GOAT. The studio wants Kira to change her entire persona, and no one likes it.
What? Is someone gonna tell me what they really think?
I will.
Connor.
But it's all cool because the episode ends with a music video that is obnoxiously early 2000s, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's very charming. Ethan sets up to have a date meet him during the filming of this music video, who turns out to be Cassidy. I guess neither of them had pictures on their profile. That's a red flag to me personally, but judging by the way they look at each other during this music montage, I think it all ended up well. As I alluded to earlier, this episode is the introduction of the Moza rover based on a Styracosaurus. When I was a kid, I just assumed that it was like a cooler looking Triceratops, to be honest. Before the Zord was functional, Haley had to order a part from Mercer Industries, giving Mezagag and Zeltrax a heads up about its existence. Zeltrax launches a full-fledged attack on the Rangers. Tommy enters his spacecraft and confronts him, referring to him as Smitty. They have an incredible fight sequence that ends with Zeltrax destroying the center console of the ship, causing it to explode, assumingly with Tommy inside.
No! He can't be gone!
Thankfully, Dr. O appears from the wreckage unscathed.
It's all right, Rangers.
The next episode begins with the Rangers destroying a satellite-looking machine that Mezagag is using to send messages to Jupiter. I don't know what he wants to do with Jupiter. I'm sure there's a reason. It's most likely in the Sentai. But for now, we're just going to add it to the list because it's never explained. After destroying the machine, Kira invites Ethan and Connor to go hang out at the cyber cafe. Unfortunately, they're both busy, but Ethan's acting exceptionally weird, prompting Kira to follow him around and discover that he actually had plans to go on a date with Cassidy. He explains to Kira how Cassidy's actually kind of cool and that she's just insecure, and tells Kira that if she's willing to make the first move, Cassidy's actually a great person, which is a surprisingly mature perspective. MMPR just taught me to laugh at my bullies for being fat and stupid. This is actually valid advice for dealing with difficult people. He asks Kira to give Cassidy a chance, and they do this handshake.
All right, I'll try.
I don't know how many times I'm going to mention this, but I've loved watching the friendship of these three develop throughout the series so far. Like Kira being excited, she was so excited to tell them about this contract that she got in the last episode, or like her asking them to just meet up at the cyber cafe after a mission, and this handshake, of course. It's just, they're just so wholesome. They're just such a wholesome group of kids. Taking Ethan's advice, Kira uses her internship at the news station to get Cassidy a job reporting on a petting zoo, but Cassidy hates it and falls in a puddle of mud, thusly fumbling the bag. Mezagag creates a giant monster to take over the news station's satellite. I don't know, I genuinely do not understand his fixation with Jupiter. I'm really sure there's an explanation in the Sentai, but my man is just sending radio waves to Jupiter for nothing. This is treated as an all hands on deck situation, with all Rangers being called to the lab, and Mezagag sends out Elsa and the evil White Ranger clone to the scene as well.
I'll look for the white dude.
Right.
Huh? Sorry, the evil white dude.
Me on Twitter, I don't know, I don't really know what I meant by that joke. I just hope that you get the vibes. You know, Trent 1v1s Elsa, and Connor takes on the evil White Ranger while he's in Super Dino mode. Or I guess he's in Super Dino Clone.
Super Dino Clone!
I don't know. Cassidy and Devin arrive, and they shoot a report on the Megazord battle. The episode ends with the main three in the newsroom for no reason. Kira has an internship, but I really don't think that gives her the authority to just allow Connor and Ethan to sit in on a live to sit in on a live broadcast. Like no one there knows that these three are Power Rangers. I don't know why they were allowed to sit in on this. That could just go on the list. Also, and this is a minor thing, I feel like Trent's just been falling into the background in these more recent episodes. I know partially that's because of the Sentai footage, but Trent was just like Trent was a really big part of this fight, right? Like, he was handling the Elsa business while the others were doing whatever. And the episode ends on Cassidy giving this really heartfelt speech about the Rangers being the heroes of Reefside. And we have these close-ups on the main three. And I get why we couldn't do it with JDF because he wasn't around to film this episode. So we can't do that with him. But like, Trent is a full-ass member of the team now. that actually does important shit. I don't know, it just would have been nice for him to also be a part of that moment. He wasn't even in the first part of the episode where like they were taking down that satellite or whatever, and that wasn't Sentai footage or anything. The bikes were in that scene. It just feels like they're like pushing him to the side as much as they can in some cases. In other cases, it feels like they're focusing on him too much, because he is low-key, he's the main character of the show. I'm not even gonna lie to you. This report gives Cassidy a job at the news station, and in the last scene of this episode, Cassidy is thanking Kira for the opportunity, which is a great note to end on. This episode has a lot of great character progression for literally both of them. This is actually one of my favorite episodes, to be honest. Episode 25, Hawk Tuin's Curse. I'm sorry, all right? I'm just sorry, okay? The Rangers are visiting another museum this year. How many field trips have they had, dude? I'm convinced Reedside is like a rich neighborhood. It's either that or we're gonna have to put it on the list. So we're just gonna assume all the students here are very affluent. Thankfully, all the Rangers are in attendance, including Cassidy and Devin. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the show started with like 3 Rangers this year, but these two take up the same space in my mind that a green and pink would have in other shows. I don't know if it's because the show actually focuses on them more than other comedic duos, or if it's just because I personally like them more or whatever. I really couldn't tell you. They find Tutenhawken. All right, it's not that different, okay? It's not that different from what I said earlier. And Ethan really wants to crack the hieroglyphics on its tomb, comparing it to a computer code. Back at the cyber cafe, all of the Ranger teens are hanging out, including Trent. Just look. When Ethan cracks the code and is given a curse for reading it out loud. This causes him to be late picking up his mom from work, as well as break his brand new laptop, get covered in mud, get attacked by tyrannodrones, and covered in smelly fish that makes him stink, and worst of all, catch some attitude from his girl.
I find your odor most foul, peasant.
Peasant? Man, people called you shallow, but I always told them they were wrong. It's like I was the one who was wrong.
I'm really happy to see Ethan sticking up for himself in this moment, because I feel like he wouldn't have earlier in the season, but you can just tell he's genuinely hurt here, right? Like, he really liked Cassidy a lot. It just made me sad. Ethan decodes more hieroglyphics and finds out that he needs to defeat Tutenhawken in the sky to end the curse. Thankfully, Haley has made Ethan a new bike.
Whoa, check it out!
Few things here. All 5 Rangers already have bikes, and 4 of them have Raptors. So why Haley is working on a bike just for Ethan? I don't know. We could put that on the list. In fact, we will put that on the list. It just feels like a waste of time and resources, if I'm being honest.
It wouldn't happen to fly, would it?
Fly? No.
We, need it to fly.
Thankfully, she's able to make it fly, and Ethan defeats the monster, freeing him from his curse. And while this episode is really an Ethan-focused episode, Cassidy is the one who learns a good lesson here. You see, Tutenhawken chooses Cassidy to be his new shorty, which is why she's dressed up like Cleopatra in that scene where she tells off Ethan. But when Tutenhawken is mean to Devin, she decides to stand up for her friend and leave his sorry ass. She even apologizes to Ethan in the end, which is huge character development, man. That's huge for her character. I really like Cassidy and Devin, man. Like, they did such a good job of making these characters actually enjoyable. They could have just made them 2 bumbling idiots that learn nothing throughout the entire series, and just have her being mean and him being lame, like their entire identities, and that's it, and just leave it there. But they didn't, and they made her an actual character that actually goes through things, dude. This is awesome. Episode 26, Elsa creates a monster that needs Nickelodeon slime, and Dr. O and Haley believe it may help him unmorph, so they slime him, and it allows Dr. O to unmorph, but it just leaves him invisible. They theorize that it actually put his Dino Gem's power into overdrive. In this episode, Ethan and Cassidy are also planning a picnic date.
No, let me handle everything. You're my guest, I don't want you to lift a finger.
Ethan, you dog, bro. You dog. The other 3 teens put him through a dating boot camp at the cyber cafe. Kira teaches him style, Connor teaches him romance, and Trent teaches him class. Like I said, These four have become such good friends, and moments like this are where they could just like chill and hang out and enjoy each other's company and like be there for each other as friends outside of Ranger stuff. It really allows you to feel that connection more, and it just gives depth to their characters. I'm also just happy that Trent is here, mostly, to be honest. On the date, Ethan begins to bungle it, but an invisible Dr. O helps him out. Yo, Tommy's a real one. I wish I had a teacher helping me get scrunge in high school. Are you kidding me? Anyways, Ethan discovers that he really doesn't have much in common with Cassidy and wants to break up with her. Thankfully, Cassidy decides to end it before he has the chance to say anything because she notices herself being nicer to Devin, and she can't have that. I'm not even joking. That's actually her reasoning for breaking up with him. And that's really sad for me because I really liked Ethan and Cassidy as a couple, and I thought that this was taking her character in a really good direction. I literally just flipped out about it in the last episode segment. But we still have 12 episodes, so we gotta stretch out her being mean to Devin just a little bit longer. We move on to episode 27, Fighting Spirit. A fan favorite for a lot of people, myself included. In this episode, Tommy has the idea to use his Dino Gem to power a machine that will help make him visible. Everyone seems apprehensive to do so, but Tommy claims that it's one of the strongest power sources they have access to, so it may be their only chance. Haley loads it into the machine, and it seems to put Tommy's body through a great amount of stress. The Rangers begin to worry, but ultimately, it works, and Dr. O is back. But is left in a coma, and his Dino Gem is split into 3 pieces. He's brought to the hospital where we watch him battle against previous Ranger powers, and it's revealed that he's not actually battling his previous self, but he's fighting for his life. While this is happening, Elsa and the evil White Dino Ranger have created a more powerful pterosaur with the ability to neutralize the Rangers' Dino Gems, essentially causing them to lose their Ranger powers. Cassidy is assigned to report on the current monster attack, but as she explains to the news director, when she arrives, there are no Rangers to be found, leading to the station reporting the headline, "Rangers Abandon Reefside." The Rangers are with Dr. O in the hospital when they see reports of the pterosaur attacking the city on the news. The teenagers cannot stand to watch what's happening without taking action, and move out to take on the pterosaur even without their powers.
You don't stand a chance without your powers.
That wouldn't stop Dr. O, and it's not gonna stop us either.
This episode's amazing on several levels. Obviously, there's the fan service, right? Seeing several costumes come back and watching Tommy have to battle all of these various versions of his past self, really showing off his history with the franchise. Not only does this episode highlight Tommy's will to fight, but it also shows like the impact that he's had on these kids. Much like how Zordon has impacted him, Rangers are told to never back down from a fight, even when they think they'll lose. They continue to choose to save people and do what is right, even without their powers. It's a powerful sentiment that really goes back to a theme that is present in every single show in this franchise. Easily, this is one of the best episodes in all of Dino Thunder, and maybe all of Power Rangers in some ways. Obviously, Dr. O is fine in the end, and he's able to save the day in Super Dino mode, marking not only his first time in the form, but also JDF's return to the series. Episode 28 is about Connor having a crush on a girl named Krista that Trent claims is way too deep to get with him. And again, as I said, Trent is a soft boy, so that actually means a lot coming from him. She is protesting the city's decision to take down one of the oldest trees in Reefside, and Connor agrees to help her in hopes of impressing her. You see, the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers probably would be the teenagers choosing to do the protesting in this episode. Connor could not be more different from the original 5, I'm just saying. But I really like that, because you know what? He's not a perfect person, and that's part of his arc. Mezagag also wants this tree for its syrup. I guess it's been planted over the Fountain of Youth, like the literal in-universe version of the Fountain of Youth is found in Reefside, so it gives the tree some special properties. During the protest, Krista overhears Connor telling Ethan that he actually doesn't give a shit about the tree, and Krista tells him off. But Connor saves her from being crushed using his super speed because one of the attachments on the crane being used to take down the tree almost falls on her. This means that my man still has a chance. She almost died, so he still has an in, right? And that's all that matters. He apologizes and the two are on better terms, but Zeltrax is back in this episode and extracts syrup from the tree. Elsa finds him and the two engage in combat. I don't know why these two in particular are beefing all of a sudden, but I guess that works. The exchange ends with Zeltrax turning the tree into a monster. The Rangers overhear that Zeltrax is back from Devon talking about it at the Cyber Cafe, leading to a team meeting at the lab, during which Connor is beginning to have hangups about being a superhero. He sees how passionate people like Krista are about certain causes, and he feels bad about himself for not having that same level of compassion, thinking that he's not a good person and thus not worthy of being a Ranger. This leads to him and Dr. O having another chat similar to that of episode 3, where Connor also expressed not feeling worthy of being a Ranger. And this is why I say Connor is so underrated. He has crazy imposter syndrome and is genuinely a really flawed person. We've mentioned that several times, but thankfully, he's mentored by one of the greatest Rangers in the show's history. Dr. O constantly mentions how he sees so much of himself in Connor, and it's just so obvious that he's low-key his favorite sometimes, but I really can't see how people say that Connor does nothing in this series, or that he just falls into the background, because he has one of the most fleshed out arcs in the show, really, wanting to be a good person, wishing he could be better, striving to be what he believes a Ranger should be, because his teacher is one of the greatest Rangers of all time. That's such an amazing concept, man. The Rangers are baited to fight with Triptoids, and Trent is told to stay behind because it does not work with the Sentai footage they have. Zeltrax arrives, now taking a more mutated form thanks to the sap from the tree, and Connor calls the auxiliary Zords to combine with the Meza Rover to create the Triceramax Megazord. I always love when they use the auxiliary Zords for a combination later in the show. It just feels so much more important than them just being arm attachments that are like thrown away later. After the battle, Zeltrax returns to where the old tree was once planted to find Krista, and he kidnaps her. Connor attempts to save her, but is unable to. Thankfully, he's able to track Zeltrax down, and during the confrontation, he's suddenly able to summon his battleizer, seemingly out of nowhere. I swear to God, this show is so well thought out and so well written in some ways, but just like isn't in a lot of other ways. I guess you could just chalk this up to being universal dino energy or whatever, or maybe you could call it the Triassic Rangers Super Dino mode, since this is like technically a different Ranger form. I, for one, am just gonna add it to the list. Also, he has a yo-yo as a weapon, which I also am going to add to the list. The yo-yo doesn't offend me necessarily. I just think it's funny that he has shoulder cannons, but time and time again chooses to have the dragon yo-yo as his first means of offense. The episode is great though for continuing Connor's arc and allowing us to look at how far he's come as a character so far. I'm also really glad this is one of the episodes JDF was available to shoot for, because having that talk in person reflects really well to like that same talk that they had in episode 3. I just don't understand why the battleizer's here, to be honest. He kind of didn't even need one. Anyways, we're left with only 10 episodes in Power Rangers Dino Thunder, and my VHS tape just ran out. So I think now would be a great time to go on to another intermission. So for this intermission, I wanted to do something really different, hence why we're in a little bit of a different area, because I need to move a little more. I can't be at my desk. Basically, I was lucky enough to be a child when Power Rangers Dino Thunder was airing, right? 20 years ago. It's the whole point of this video. And with that came the privilege of being able to have a lot of these toys growing up. Unfortunately, due to like life and things that happen when you're a child, I gave up a lot of these toys that I had when I was a kid. Right? That's just the reality of it. That happens. So I figured that now that I'm an adult with adult money, it'd be cool to like film my reaction to seeing these toys that I've lost over the years, that I haven't seen in potentially 15 years, or close to 20 for a lot of these, right? I moved a lot growing up, not even just like towns and stuff, but like houses. So a lot of stuff got lost to time, and I figured it'd be cool to like rediscover a lot of this stuff with you. One of the main things I wanted to talk about real quick is you can't really talk about toys that aired from Dino Thunder in 2004 without talking about the Thundersaurus, right? I kind of went into detail about my thoughts and like opinions on this already. What I really like how the arms for this, right, are motorized. I like the motorized gimmick of this a lot. I think that it's really cool. Obviously, I like the aesthetic of it, but like I said, the motor is what really makes this stand out from like a lot of other Power Ranger toys that exist, right? Because now this isn't just like a saw blade that I move with my hand. It turns into a legit saw blade that I can see move. And that's really cool, right? Unfortunately, what happens is due to time, these motors and electronics and stuff typically don't tend to hold up that well. That's what happened with this guy. I never had the privilege of having the DX robot as a kid. This is just too much money for my mom to spend, I guess. But I did find this at one of those secondhand stores. I discovered that not too many, like I guess other states or towns don't really have too many of these, like retro game stores and stuff like that, or like retro toy stores. I'm lucky enough to be in a town that has, or an area that has at least like 6 or so. But yeah, so I found this, and I found this bundled with this at like a secondhand shop. And of course, you know, when I saw it on the counter, I was like, I gotta pull the trigger. So I did. And these are the only 2 DX Dino Thunder whatever I have. Obviously I'd love more. I do like this. I do one day want to like try and open this just to see if I could like get into the electronics and stuff. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the channel. I used to work at one of those secondhand stores, and part of my job was like opening up old shit and fixing it. And so I have a real knack. Now, I'm not really talented, but I have a lot of fun opening up like stupid shit like this and trying to fix it. So I think this may be fun one day, and I'm sure I'll update on Twitter or something if I ever figure it out, but I doubt I can get this working. I think that's my hubris speaking, thinking that I can make this 20-year-old piece of shit bring it back to life. So now let's get into the toys that I had growing up, like when I was a child. I'm gonna do my best to not give away my address. I've moved since purchasing a lot of these toys. I've been planning this video since December 2023. I thought I was gonna have it up earlier in 2024. So like, even if you do see my address, that's from the old set. Okay? Oh, smells old. Did they glue a bag to a bag? What the fuck? Oh my god. So they put this bag, there's like this, how do I show you this? There's like this bag that's inside of this eBay bag that has this Amazon bag inside. I don't even know what this is. I forgot. Like, I forgot what a lot of these are. Oh, I know what this is. Oh, this is cute. They gave me like a little handwritten note. It says, "Thank you so much for the support," because I got a lot of these off eBay. So this is something that I had at my dad's house. I remember this is one of the toys I kept at my dad's house. And it has electronics. I was going to try and turn it on. It is essentially like a Battleizer doll that has like a punching ability. I think, if I remember correctly, I don't think I had this. I think I lost a lot of this. There was like cannons and shit that went like around it. What I remember, what I thought was the coolest thing about this is that you can open this and expose Trent's face. I had the White Ranger version. I don't remember if I had the red one. I know for a fact I had this at my dad's house. I remember this for a fact. And what's cool is like he could, like, you push on this and it's supposed to, come on, please. Oh, okay, no. That's it. Okay. So there's this button up here. I didn't realize that. It's been a minute, all right? So there's this button, right? And I'm trying to play to the camera. So like you press this button and then it does like a punching action, right? It's kind of cool. And so you pull it back. And then it's kind of dinky now. Oh, you push on this and you could like do more. That's probably why I remember pushing it out so much. Another cool thing I remember is like, I don't know if you can see it, his abs have like speakers. You can kind of see like the black lines there. And I think you used to like say shit. I don't know what you would press to like activate that. Okay, now we gotta open this thing up. Okay. We're back. And we got batteries. I'm gonna open up the back. There are Amazon batteries inside. What this tells me is that this worked recently if there are Amazon batteries inside, right? Because Amazon wasn't in existence till like what? 2010? Not to the point where they're making batteries, for sure. Okay. Okay. It's the moment of truth. Nothing happened. Okay. Well, if I turn it on, how would he talk? Because maybe there is no activation sound. I'm not seeing anything besides the on-off switch, so I'm just gonna assume that it's these buttons that are supposed to make sounds, because nothing else seems like pressable on him. So I'm forced to assume that this is broken, unfortunately, but it's fine. That's to be expected. It's probably why I found it for so cheap. So this next package is pretty small. I think I can just open it with my hands. Oh shit, okay, so this... Oh wow. Okay, so this is like a little version of like the green, of the White Ranger's thing. I'm trying really hard to stay in frame. So this is like a little version of the White Ranger's Zord with the Parasaur attached. I think this can... I feel like I'm gonna break it. Okay, I think I was confused because what I remember is this and the arm being removable. So I don't know if they made multiple versions of this or whatever. But this is still cool because you got like a little... That's kind of cool. That's kind of tight. Nah, this has to be removable because he's like, he's a little dude on there. He's straight up like in full ass... Do the legs move? The legs don't move. Okay, this ain't removable. No, they kind of do. Wait. Nah, the legs move. And so does the head. The head rotates. Right? This has to. No. Oh shit, okay, it does. So this is like, yeah, it's like a baby. It's like a baby version of the DX one. Do the arms go out at all? No, the arms are molded that way. So, yeah. And then you have a little Parasaur. I might put this on like my desk at work. This is kind of tight. And then you're left with like an armless. Maybe there were like, because this arm has to come off too, right? Yeah. I think there are multiple arms you could buy for this. But if I'm remembering correctly, I only remember owning the Parasaur one. If there are more, correct me, obviously. So yeah, you like put it back on and it transforms. Fold up the legs, I guess, right? Like, that's as far as the legs go. Okay. So yeah, you put it on there. That's kind of tight. Okay. I remember that. So this next box stab right into the toy. I want to show you guys before I see it. I'll look in the camera, or like I can see me over there. So I'm gonna open it and show you guys first, and you'll get my reaction at the same time. So okay, yeah, I had this growing up. So this is, oh my god, I have not seen these figures in so fucking long. These spikes at the edges, I used to think that this like was so cool because the legs, yeah. So the legs, like the bike, you know how like the bike figures are always different than the basic line. I had the bike figures growing up, and I didn't even know there was a difference between these guys and the basic line. The arm, so like the arms are more stylized. There's like a arm guard. I'm trying to show you. There's like the arms are more like a guard, less of like a glove, if that makes sense. Like you see like the strap around. Yeah, and like the thighs have like spikes. Like it's all spiky throughout. And I remember I thought these figures, oh, the chest is lifted too. I don't know if you're gonna get out of focus. The chest is lifted. I do not remember. I had all of the boys in this style. I think all of them except Trent. And then I had this bike. This is the bike. I had this. This is exactly what I had growing up. So this is the hovercraft cycle, and it looks like the landing gear. What would you call this? The brake is in full swing. And okay, so just like in the show, it transforms. So you can already see like the wheels spinning. Do they lock? Is there like a lock? That would be ideal, right? Doesn't look like it. It looks like they're just free. So yeah, just like in the show, like it spins out and then these go down, like the wheels turn out, and this turns up. Yeah, and this extends a little, yep. And then it's like, I feel like there's supposed to be more friction in this piece because it just did that. Like that just does that now. And then obviously there's like pegs, kind of see them in the feet, and they go right here, and it just plugs right in. These are, surprised these holes are still fitting in nice. So she said. And you have a hovercraft cycle. Now it can do all this. I yes, okay. So I was gonna say, I remember there being like a way to make this move, and it's this back here. So like, let's see if that mechanism's. So like you're gonna make it spin by pressing on this like little back plate. Oh my god, this is so cool. Yes! Oh, I'm so happy that still works. Oh my god, okay. You know what we have to do now, right? We have to see if the Lightning Collection figure will work with this. And by the looks of it, he's way too fucking big. Like, let's, for comparison's sake, I don't even have to get him positioned correctly. He's significantly bigger than the original 2004 one. Still happy to have both, not gonna lie. Alright, yeah, so that one brought back some memories. Oh my god, okay. We push forward. We have another box here. Again, I want to show you guys before I see it. So... multiple things in this box? There are multiple things in this box. Oh, another thank you note. Thank you for buying this Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Oh, fuck you. Black ATV. So like I said, I had the Blue Ranger bike, and I had the Black Ranger and Red Ranger as bike figures. And I don't remember what bike I had for the Red Ranger. I want to say it's his version of the hovercraft cycle. I could be wrong. But obviously right here. Holy shit. Yes. We have the Black Ranger's ATV. It has the missile still. And what I remember about this missile, this is the button up top. Oh, that still has some power. So let's do that again. Oh, fuck! Okay, where did that go? What I always didn't get about this is that, like, clearly this was made for the White Ranger first, because this, like, I don't know, like, fuck, I'm an idiot. As a kid, you can't really see it because it's a black background, but, like, as a kid, swatching now. Okay, so as a kid, I thought this was like a bat, but clearly it's like made to be the Drago Ranger, like the Dragozord, right? Like, this was made with the White Ranger in mind first, before the Black Ranger. But this was in the show, and I think that's why I remember that episode so well, because I had this toy. And I remember Trent pulling this out. I think I had the White Ranger version of this. No, I didn't have the White Ranger version of this. I had the Black Ranger version of this for a fact. And then this is the figure. This is it's not my childhood figure, but, like, this is the figure I had of Dr. O growing up. Like, this is... Come on. Yes! So in the same sort of style as Bluey here, right? That same sort of look. Oh my god. I forgot about this. I didn't forget. Obviously I bought him. But holy shit. Put him on the bike. His hands in first, because that's the hardest part. Now he's bend his knees. Right? Because he's kind of looking a little weird. He can't really get comfortable. And don't look. But yeah, that's about it, right? It's about how it's supposed to look. I shouldn't have done this with his background, but this is it. So cool. I don't know what would require. How did this even get to me? There's no shipping label. Okay. I did not order this. So what I attempted to order, this I can't open easily on camera. Terrible packaging. So what I attempted to order was this doll, because I had this bike. Which, now that I'm looking at it, seems to be brand new. I wanted to recreate this, right? But I wasn't expecting a brand new toy. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that I got Mystic Forest Yellow here. Does head come off? No. Okay. That's on there. Alright, so a part of me is vaguely disappointed, but the cloth on this feels so fucking raggedy. because it's a 20-year-old toy, that I almost am kind of glad that I don't have any emotional attachment to it, because I don't know, I just don't care. Yeah, that was supposed to be like the big finale, was opening that bike. I didn't know it was brand new when I bought it. It was going to be opening that bike and putting Homeboy on it, and I don't have the time. This is the last thing I'm filming, and I don't have the time to order a new one. So, yeah. Does the cape come off? Say, this isn't about Mystic Force. I guess giveaway? If anyone's interested in having this, DM me on Twitter. Follow my Twitter, subscribe to the channel, and DM me, and you can get. You know what? Subscribe to the Patreon. Whoever subscribes to the Patreon will be entered in a raffle, and you will have an opportunity to own this. We'll say like the first month, right? First month of being subscribed to the Patreon. Subscribe a month if you subscribe within a month of this video coming out, you will be entered in a raffle where you will receive this. Get excited. Some other minor things that I have. Essentially, I was drunk one night and ordered something. I googled, I didn't Google, I searched on eBay for really, really low Dino Thunder auctions to see if I could win any like minor stuff right before I filmed this. And I found these stamps that are probably dried out and don't work anymore, but I found them. And what's cool about this is I remember this art. I remember this art very well. I don't know if it was exclusive to these stamps. I think I had these stamps. It's just cool that I got them. I'm not gonna open it because the ink is probably dried out and it's probably worth just not being open. Because at that point, like this, I bought this for $1. I'm gonna be fully transparent with you. And if I open this, it's probably gonna be considered trash. It already is kind of considered trash, but it's cooler owning it fully in box, so we're gonna keep it this way. I'm really disappointed about this. I'm not gonna. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, really, kind of sad. I was kind of excited. I'm not gonna lie, because I remember. I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong. I think this was like my big Christmas gift one year. Like this was like the big thing I saw under the tree that I remember playing with this on Christmas. Cause I was sitting at my kitchen counter in my childhood house and I was playing with this and I had the doll. And I think I remember my mom wearing a Christmas sweater. And there were Christmas cookies on that counter. I think. I'm pretty sure this was like my big. I could be gaslighting myself into being emotional right now, but I'm almost certain that this bike was like my big Christmas gift one year. And if it was, that was like the last time I had Christmas with like my whole family, because my parents had split up after that. I could be wrong. I might be gaslighting myself, but like I vaguely remember this. I don't know. And the other thing that I got was this. This thing is a piece of shit. I think it's supposed to go with the rest of the canon. I don't know if this is like sold separately or like what. The electronics in it do not work. And yeah, I didn't own this as a kid. I had the Halloween costume, and that was the Thunder Max one that I had. And if I'm remembering properly, it was far more bitchin' than whatever this is, because that staff was like the size of my body, and I was a fat 4-year-old. All right, you got to remember this. This, I think this is even close to intimidating, even as a 4-year-old. But yeah, it definitely is supposed to combine with the other ones, right? Because that's like the canon mode, right? That is everything that I got. Let me know if you thought this was cool. There's not too many other Power Rangers seasons that I really like grew up watching, like where I was like actively getting the toys. Like, that's a fucking lie. I just lied to you, because I remember buying toys for SPD. Had some toys for Mystic Force. Didn't have that for Mystic Force, but and I think SPD and Mystic Force are the two I remember most. I didn't have too many Ninja Storm toys growing up. I don't know why. I think I genuinely think I missed that season, because it was mostly Dino Thunder, SPD. I skipped Overdrive because I didn't like it as a kid, and then Jungle Fury and RPM. And I think that's when I moved on to wanting Sentai toys. And I didn't really start buying Sentai toys like that until like late high school, when I had my own job. So yeah. But let me know if you would want to see this with other seasons, because that could be pretty cool. I don't know if there's anything else I would really get that like emotional about, but it could be pretty cool. So let me know, and subscribe to the Patreon to win this piece of shit. Oh, fuck. This room's a mess. Episode 29 is about Ethan and Devin competing in a video game tournament. Ethan gets too cocky, doesn't practice, and is ultimately beaten by Devin in the end in order to learn a lesson because it's a kid show. Y'all remember that it's a kid show, right? I certainly remember it's a kid show, of course. That's why I'm making a multi-hour long video talking about it in depth and going over the history about this show that's for babies. In the episode, we get to see how Cassidy operates without Devin doing everything for her, because he's busy actually practicing for the tournament. And she's just a mess here. It's kind of cathartic seeing her admit how much she needs Devin, and it's also nice to see Devin catch a dub for once. The only thing that pertains to the main plot in this episode is the hunt for Zeltrax. Mezagag, like a regretful ex, really wants to find him now that he's gone no contact with him. And Dr. O takes a day off from school in order to find him as well, which I need to know how much PTO this man has. If we consider each of the episodes that he was stuck in his ranger form or invisible as 1 week, as just 1 week in the school year, he would have been out for roughly 3.5 months. Brother, my job gives me 3 weeks a year in PTO, and I'm considered lucky. That's 2024 standards too. Dude, this is going on the list. Once Zeltrax actually presents himself to the Rangers and the evil White Ranger, he ends up getting a migraine after the evil White does some minor league shit talking.
Zeltrax, think about who created you. You owe him your life.
This takes him out of commission for the rest of the series until the last 2 episodes. I'm gonna put that on the list too. I know the show explains that it's because Mezagag has to perform some sort of upkeep to Zeltrax's like cybernetics every so often in order to keep him alive or whatever, but the show frames it in this moment as like him just getting his feelings hurt, and I find that really funny. Another thing going on the list is the Rangers having the Stegozord, as a few episodes prior to this, the evil White Ranger was also piloting it, and in a few more episodes after this, we're gonna see them regain control of the Stegozord. I don't think the writers knew, nor did they even care who had custody of the White Ranger Zords at any given time of this show. For all we know, there might as well be 2 of them in some cases. But I do like what this episode does for Zeltrax's character, considering he's kind of been Mezagag's punching bag this whole time. He's been blindly loyal to him strictly out of guilt for bringing him back to life. Seeing him finally snap and want his own autonomy back is really cathartic for his character. Episode 30 begins with Trent congratulating his father on his research on plant growth, when Mercer explains how, while he is happy about discovering something that will benefit the world, he notes that not everything he does is such a success, referencing his regret for creating Mezagag. Trent asks Mercer if he could tell the other Rangers about his secret, but Mercer declines the help, I assume out of pride. In this episode, Trent and the White Ranger clone are beginning to feel weak when Elsa drops this bar.
It caused a glitch in the morphing grid. 2 White Rangers can't exist simultaneously.
Not only is this a really neat reference to mythology that was set up in previous series, you know, with too much pink energy and whatnot, but the wiki tells me that this is the first mentioning of the morphing grid since Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. How the fuck do they go almost 10 years without mentioning the main power source that connects all Rangers together? For context, that's like if Star Wars forgot what the Force was, or like if the Ninja Turtles didn't talk about mutagen for an entire one of their reboots that they have a million of. How did that happen? How did they go that long without referencing the morphing grid? So the Clone Ranger decides the best way to get rid of Trent is through contacting Ethan. He wants to brawl with all 5 Rangers, but they conveniently decide to not invite Trent to the Rumble for whatever reason, and also because they really want to milk this last bit of Sentai footage, where the White Ranger takes on all 4 of them. After the fight, Ethan is given back control of the Stegozord. Do I need to add it to the list again? You see what I'm saying? Should I add it to the list again? Fuck it, we'll add it to the list again. Another thing I keep forgetting to mention is Dr. O summoning a tsunami bigger than any of the Megazords for the Thundersaurus to ride on whenever they do have control of the Stegozord, because it's a surfboard and whatnot. I'm adding that to the list as well. A, because it just seems impractical to do this almost every single week, and 2, we never know where that water goes, so it's just assumed that everyone within a 15-mile radius of what's happening just drowns whenever, just suffocates and dies every time they summon the Stegozord. That just... Why would you do that? Trent and the White Ranger have their climactic battle, each exchanging blows and commenting on the other's prowess. Much like Tommy in a previous series, Trent is not only taking on an evil clone, but a representation of all of his previous wrongdoings. Ultimately, he is victorious, and he is now the full owner of not only the Stegozord, but also the White Ranger powers. The episode ends with all of the Rangers in the Megazord, including Tommy piloting the Stegozord, summoning their ultimate combination, the Thundersaurus Megazord Full Power, or the Valkasaurus Megazord, according to the toy line. This episode also marks the first time we've seen the Black Ranger in a Megazord cockpit at all, which is insane considering he debuted in episode 4, and this is like episode 30. Like I said, he does pilot the Stegozord in this episode, and we also see him piloting the White Ranger Megazord earlier in the episode. This ends with Anton Mercer gifting Trent his Nobel Prize for his research, noting that Trent deserves it more, as not only is Trent responsible for saving the world, but Mercer doesn't deserve it, as Mezagag is the one putting it in peril time after time. We're now at episode 31, thunderstorm. I'm sure a lot of people were probably waiting for this point in the video. This is the 2-part crossover with Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Do I have, oh my god, I don't have any Ninja Storm toys. Fuck. Wait, no, I gotta have some. I have the Legacy Ninja Storm toys, but, though I have those hanging up in their boxes. I leave this guy, the little Build-A-Figure that comes with them, because, like, I don't know, it seems like this would lose whatever structural integrity it already it still has left. The crossover opens with a construction team accidentally releasing Lothor from hell. Nothing list-worthy. They just dug too deep. That makes sense. Kira and Trent are studying at the cyber cafe when Kira notices Blake, the Navy Thunder Ranger, ordering a milkshake with some dude hanging out next to him he doesn't matter. That guy does not matter whatsoever to the plot. I don't know why they didn't just make that Hunter, to be honest. I feel like it would have been better if that was Hunter, or like literally any other character. We find that Blake is now a famous motocross racer, as we see him giving out signatures to fans. He invites Kira to his next race, and she asks if this is a date, making Trent clearly jealous. We cut to the Ninja Academy, where we find Tori, Shane, and Dustin sparring with a group of students. Afterwards, they exchange some of their typical banter, and we get to see how much they've grown into the teacher roles while still retaining their personalities. Dustin says some stupid shit, and Shane volleys back some banter, and Tori comments how Shane is starting to sound a lot more like Sensei. Speaking of, they find a scroll in the woods telling them to meet Sensei at the highest point in Blue Bay Harbor. We cut to Haley and Dr. O, who have created a computer program that tracks evil. I don't know how that works. I'm putting that on the list. How do you track evil? Haley says that if their readings are correct, there should be a blanket of evil across the entire state, which I know is meant to set up whatever Lothor's plan is, but what I'm more interested in is the fact that this confirms that both Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder take place in California. I don't know if anyone has made a map of where every single Power Ranger series takes place canonically, but this is now my new hyperfixation. I am now going to hyperfocus on this whenever I rewatch a season. Like, I know Angel Grove was also supposed to be California, I'm pretty sure, and for some reason I also feel like almost every other season is supposed to take place there. Outside of Lost Galaxy, because that's like Terra Venture, right? I don't really know, but now I'm realizing how much I would love to see a season that takes place somewhere different, like New York City, like a real like good like different setting that you could play around a lot more with, or like Hawaii, or like Chicago, or maybe like Texas. I don't know why I said Texas. I feel like I just need to throw in a red state, to be honest. The Ninja Rangers find Sensei overlooking a cliffside when he informs them about Lothor's return. The Rangers are in disbelief and don't know how to defeat him since they sacrificed their powers in the last episode of their series. Sensei gives them a new set of wind morphers, but when they attempt to morph, something goes terribly wrong. Lothor reveals he's disguised himself as Sensei and has brainwashed the Wind Rangers into becoming evil. The camera pans to reveal the real Sensei tied up over the cliff. What I like about this scene is not only are Sensei and Lothor meant to be brothers in the show, but they're also played by the same actors, right? So one being dressed as the other in order to like fool the Rangers is actually really fun. And watching Grant McFarlane, the actor, switch between the two roles during the scene was kind of cool to see. We cut to find Cam running into his cousins, Mara and Capri, while trying to find his father, Sensei. Besides the obvious fact that Mara is played by the same actor who plays Cassidy, I always found it really interesting that they gave these two pink and orange ninja outfits. I imagine it's because these two are like just, you know, these two, but I always wondered if there were other potentially more rare ninja elements than like the show led us to believe, besides like, you know, the wind, water, land, red, blue, yellow, and like the Thunder Rangers being whatever the Thunder Rangers are, right? My headcanon is that as a kid, Mara was a fire ninja because she's orange, and Capri was just pink. I thought a lot about this as a kid. I really thought hard about this, but I could like I don't know what pink would be. I'm gonna be real. We find Cassidy and Devin looking for an interview with Blake, and we see Kira, Ethan, and Connor watching the race. It's crazy how Trent was literally standing next to Kira when she got the tickets, and yet he still didn't get an invite to this. kind of messed up. We spend a good while on the motocross race and it's shot really well. We cut back to Cam in the woods looking for Sensei, Tori, Dustin, and Shane, and he's unable to find them. But he notices a slime that was present at the Abyss of Evil, I referred to as Hell earlier, and grows concerned about the ninja school, where we cut back to find Lothor, of course, re-kidnapping the students with the evil rangers at his side. While this is a really cool fight scene, I really wish the ninja students got a chance to help out during this crossover. I understand why they couldn't in like Ninja Storm proper, because that's like, that would kind of defeat the purpose of like the 3 and whatever, but it would have been a really cool sort of full circle moment if they were around to take down Lothor's army in this time around, right? Capri and Mara are spared, swearing their allegiance to Lothor, which is to be expected, of course. You can't really bring back these two characters for a crossover without putting them in their iconic outfits. That's kind of like imperative for something like this. The only acceptable way to work around this is to make the two of them Rangers, but the show hates the color orange, and the idea of having two girls, or excuse me, more than two girls on one team is a trend that was only broken by the woke liberals who created Cosmic Fury. Also, I've been meaning to mention this, but Lothor has this really, really deep southern accent during this crossover.
I never thought I'd say this, but it's a pleasure to see y'all.
I don't think he had that during Ninja Storm. I could be wrong, right? But I just really don't remember him sounding like this. Haley notices that the wave of evil is originating from Blue Bay Harbor. Dr. O comments how that's where the ninja school is, and Haley informs us that she knows Cam and plans to contact him. In the next scene, we see Cam calling Blake and Hunter for backup. Hunter joins him, and we find that he's now a teacher at the Thunder Academy, and Blake is unable to join the two since he's busy with the motocross race. Dr. O calls the Dino Thunder trio to the base to inform them about the Wind Rangers attacking Reefside.
Evil Power Rangers? How's that even possible?
How do you not know that by now, dog? Do you know? Do you even know what series you're in? Literally, like you're sitting next to two of the most iconic evil Rangers of all time. What do you, come on. Trent comments how they're actually supposed to be the last remaining team, which makes sense. I don't remember everything too well, but I'm pretty sure every team before Dino Thunder has either lost their powers or has gone back to the year 3000 or given them up in some type of way. I'm the only ones I'm not super confident on are like In Space and Lightspeed, but at the very least, I think we can assume that the Space Rangers are out there doing like space shit, you know? The core 3 are sent out as Tommy and Trent stay on the lookout for Mezagag, because of course Trent can't help. We see the two trios clash while Cam, Blake, and Hunter watch. It's an amazing fight, but ultimately the Dino Thunder trio are forced to retreat. Mezagag and Elsa are reviewing the footage of the two teams when they notice the henchmen being used, noting that this means Lothor must be back. He sends out Elsa to go find him. When she does, the episode ends on a cliffhanger and continues in episode 32, where Cam comes up with the idea for him, Blake, and Hunter to enter the Abyss of Evil to go retrieve their powers. Down there, they find Zurgane and some foot soldiers guarding Hell. The Dino Thunder Rangers are back at the Cyber Cafe reviewing the footage from episode 38 of Power Rangers Ninja Storm, when Connor says this:
They weren't that tough. I'd fight them right here, right now.
Luckily, the Wind Rangers enter the cafe right after him saying that, and the two trios make plans to meet under some bridge later for a fight. We cut back to the Thunder Rangers and Cam when Blake almost fucking dies. Thankfully, Hunter and Cam are able to grab him before he falls, and we see a third mysterious hand reach out to help him up. The two primary color trios meet up under the bridge now for an unmorph fight, and this is just so incredible to watch. I know people hate civilian powers for whatever reason, but having the Ninja Rangers do ninja shit and the Dino Thunder Rangers use their Dino Gem powers during this fight is so much more entertaining than just watching them do whatever. The Wind Rangers prepare to escalate the battle and morph, but they're interrupted by Blake, Hunter, and Cam, who now claim to also be evil and gift the Wind Rangers a new set of coins, telling them that it's an upgrade straight from the Abyss of Evil. The Wind Rangers attempt to morph when they're knocked back. With their original coins in their morphers, Lothor's spell is finally undone. We cut back to the base where we see the two teams just illing I'm sad we don't get too much interaction between the two casts in this team up, I'm not gonna lie. But this frame, good God. This is a poster that I would have hung up in my room in the early 2000s. They're sauced. They're sauced out. After this, we have an 11-person morph sequence, roll call, and fight, complete with bikes, battleizers, and color-coded explosions. It is unapologetically one of the best fights in the show's history. The two teams bounce off of each other incredibly well, and they pull out literally everything in their arsenals, including Super Dino mode, Super Samurai mode, Triassic mode. Ethan pulls up in the hovercraft cycle at one point for no reason. It's so fun to watch. After the fight, Mara and Capri join the Rangers, claiming to have duked Lothor to retrieve the bottle that was used to imprison the ninja students. Mezagag and Lothor decide to brawl it out after losing, and this is also hype as hell. This fight is amazing. They're fighting in Mezagag's lab, and like I said before, anytime they fight indoors that isn't a warehouse, it's always so much fun to see. Mezagag wins the fight and traps Lothor inside of one of those color-coded biotubes, or whatever they are. And in the final scene, we find that the Ninja Rangers were only able to morph for one final fight, which is a very convenient way of saying that the show does not have the budget for 11 Rangers. We end the episode at another motocross race when Cassidy and Mara run into each other and comment on how pretty the other is, which is very fun. I like this crossover plenty. I would probably put it in my top 5. I still think episodes like To the 10th Power, Reinforcements from the Future, and Forever Red are just like a little bit better, which I'm afraid might be a hot take because I know a lot of people really like this episode for whatever reason. And it's a really great celebration of bringing back the Ninja Storm cast, right? I just wish they got to talk to the Dino Thunder Rangers more. Outside of Blake and Kira, we don't see any of the two casts really interact all that much, and that really just makes me sad because that's kind of half the fun of these crossovers, right? Is seeing how like the different personalities bounce off of each other. Like part of it is, yes, having like an epilogue to like the returning cast season, but it's also like seeing how they would interact with these new characters that we're beginning to fall in love with, right? After this, we have episode 33, In Your Dreams, which starts with Anton Mercer having nightmares about Mezagag that keep him awake at night. This causes Mezagag to be cranky the next time he sees Elsa, giving her the idea to destroy the Rangers in their dreams. This episode is really just an excuse to throw around a bunch of Sentai footage that is deemed to be too weird for Power Rangers, which is really saying something. But it's super creative, I'm not gonna lie. Like Kira and Ethan have dreams about a lizard and monkey monster because they were up late at night working on papers about reptiles and primates, respectively. Connor has a dream with a Christmas monster because he dreads going Christmas shopping with his mother in the morning. Dr. O has a dream where he wipes the floor with a monster. It's the first one in the episode, and it's not even a competition, dude. He fucks this monster up and does not even sweat about it. Tommy's the GOAT, like even in his dreams. And Trent does not go to sleep because he has a job and Ranger stuff to do, so he struggles to find extra time to do his homework. I would probably say that's the most interesting thing this episode has to offer, is seeing the Rangers staying up late at night at the cyber cafe to like have a last minute cram session for all of their schoolwork. And you know, it's because they're just so busy with the Ranger stuff. It's kind of rare that we ever see high school Rangers have any issues keeping up with schoolwork, to be honest. It just feels more realistic, I guess, right? I understand it's because you can't have the Rangers really like slack with their grades or whatever, but you know, they're trying to save the world, man. Of course they're not going to be able to do all their essays in time. The next episode starts with the boys playing soccer and Trent does this.
Goal! The young rookie takes down...
I don't have much to comment on here. I just think that's a cute moment. The episode revolves around Trent meeting his favorite comic book artist at a signing held at the Cyber Cafe. Elsa, in disguise as Principal Randall, gifts the comic artist a pen. That night, he blacks out and writes a story about the Rangers that comes true the next day, which traps them in a comic book dimension, and the story ends with them dying. Thankfully, he decided to give Trent an advanced copy of this book where Trent is able to write himself into the story after the comic book artist gives him the pen. The biggest part of this episode is seeing Mercer admiring Trent's art, and the episode ends with Trent collaborating on a comic book with his favorite artist that is funded by Mercer. Meaning that while Trent is a Nepo baby, yes, he finally has the approval of his father. A lot of the Sentai footage in this episode has the shitty Snapchat filter over it. It looks really tacky, but this is one of the most memorable episodes in the show because of that, to be honest. Tommy says this when entering the comic book dimension.
I'm thinking comic book dimension.
My experience with this kind of places, not so awesome.
Fuck! He's referring to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, Episodes 48 and 49, Storybook Rangers. In the episode, the Rangers are at the Scholastic Book Fair. Billy finds a book on some nerd shit, Aisha gets one on fashion, and Kimberly finds a book that her father used to read to her called Grumble the Magic Elf. Tommy buys it for her because he's a spineless soy boy who just wants some squish. Miss fucking Appleby is here, the goat. Rita casts a spell on the book, trapping Tommy, Kimberly, and Rocky inside. Zed sends a legion of putties into the book to steal the toys Grumble is supposed to gift to the orphans in the story, stopping the progression of the plot and thusly trapping the Rangers inside, potentially forever. The other 3 Rangers are able to tap into the book after not being able to find their friends, and they see them being attacked by a snow monster that the Rangers aren't able to fight due to their morphers being frozen. This monster causes an avalanche, leaving us on a cliffhanger. In part 2, Bulk and Skull finish a monster they've been creating in hopes to bait the Rangers out and unmask their identities. They got the idea for this from one of the books at the fair that apparently has a step-by-step guide on how to create a monster. Rita and Zed bring the monster they've created to life and scare the 2 bullies, shitting bricks and leaving outlines of themselves on the walls trying to run away. Back at the book fair, Billy, Adam, and Aisha find the book that the other 3 Rangers are trapped in, but of course are sidetracked by Bulk and Skull's monster. Grumble saves Tommy and the others from the avalanche, and they come up with the idea of going backwards in the plot instead of forwards, hoping that will get them to one of the edges of the book either way, allowing them to escape. In the beginning of the book, the Rangers and Grumble find Mondo the Magician, who is just a cropped out PNG from Die Ranger, which may be a shock to some of you. I know you can't tell by the footage. Meanwhile, the other Rangers are able to defeat the monster of the week using the power cannon, and apparently this is a historic moment, as the wiki notes that this is the last time the power cannon is ever seen in the show. Bulk and Skull try to unmask the Rangers, now with the monster being defeated, but unfortunately Skull lands on his teeth trying to jump out of a tree. Aisha is able to save the day by drawing in the book, kinda like Trent, helping the Rangers get to the proper ending and thusly escaping from the story. Rita and Zed cast a spell in the book, releasing Mondo from the story somehow, and the 2-parter ends with them being destroyed in a Megazord battle. I'm just gonna be real with you. I don't know why this needed to be a 2-parter. I fear it's just God punishing me for procrastinating so long in this video. All the way back in 1995, Haim Saban made this a 2-parter, and then in 2004 Disney forced Tommy to reference it again, literally just to spite me today. It's a fun episode, like any other Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode. I just don't know what necessitated this story needing to be 2 parts. But yeah, that's the context to that thing that Tommy references for 5 seconds there. I hope I did my due diligence. We now find ourselves at the last 4 episodes of Power Rangers Dino Thunder. And kind of like the first 4 episodes, each episode leads directly into the next. Chronologically speaking, the next thing to happen in Dino Thunder's world is the plot to Wormhole, which is the crossover with Power Rangers SPD. We will not be talking about that today. Just don't question it. We're now on episode 35, where Ethan and Devin get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Ethan has this rare Ruby Dragon card that he's really proud of, but Principal Randall confiscates it from him. Dr. O says that he'll talk to Randall after school about getting it back, but when he walks into her office, he discovers her transforming into Elsa. I really didn't think that was that big of a secret, I'm not gonna lie to you. The two begin to have this really excellently choreographed fight in the school parking lot. Tommy even does one of his famous spin kicks. This leads to the students discovering Principal Randall's secret, and the fight ends with her leaving via Invisiportal. Ethan is upset that she left with the Ruby Dragon card, and Trent says that he'll try his best to get it back. When the Rangers ask how, he ominously states that he has his ways, and runs off. Trent finds Elsa at Mezagag's base, and she threatens to tell the Rangers his father's secret, and the two also have another great fight. The Rangers are scheduled to start training, but they end up complaining about Trent being late and how he's always keeping secrets. But they're interrupted by the Ruby Dragon monster created by Elsa using the card. The monster with Elsa mention how Trent has been keeping secrets from the other Rangers, and when asked about it, Trent tells the other Rangers that he used an Invisiportal to enter into Mezagag's base to get the card back, and claims that that was his big secret. Everyone believes it, but Kira is able to clock that something else is up. They defeat the monster, and back at the school, Dr. O and the original trio run into Trent and Dr. Mercer. When Anton gets a call on his cell phone, he reaches into his pocket where the Ruby Dragon card falls out of, and he starts to wig it and runs off. The Rangers begin to chase after him, and Trent tries to stop them, but to no avail. When they end up in Dr. O's classroom, they witness Anton Mercer transforming into Mezagag. The episode ends with everyone upset with Trent. The next episode, Mezagag punishes Elsa for planting the card on him, saying that she betrayed his trust. Elsa mentions how Mercer is Mezagag's biggest weakness, and says she did it because they needed to get rid of him. Mezagag agrees and drinks a serum separating Mercer from himself. Back at the base, everyone is upset with Trent lying. Dr. O even mentions the possibility of having Trent surrender his morpher. Kira begins to feel bad for him, expressing empathy for how she would feel in his shoes and how she wouldn't want to give up her powers. Connor then mentions how Kira never even wanted her powers to begin with and references the events of the first 2 episodes when she gave them up. This begins a clip show recapping the entire season. And honestly, after watching this, I feel really lame for even attempting to make this video, because you could really watch that and almost have the exact same experience. The episode goes into detail over everyone's arcs, spending the most amount of time on Trent's for obvious reasons. He's honestly the most complex character in this show, and I feel like this just makes that fact even more evident. Trent walks into the base begging for everyone's trust, telling them that he originally never wanted to be the White Ranger, but now he believes that it's the best thing to ever happen to him. The other Rangers don't want to hear it. Connor especially does not want to fall for Trent's shit again, but they're interrupted by a monster attack. Dr. O tells Trent that this is his last chance to prove his loyalty and allows him to join the battle, to Connor's surprise. During the fight, Connor takes the monster into space, clearly coming straight from Japan. I guess we could just put that on the list. Even though now I'm kind of reflecting on it, and I feel like mentioning Japanese stuff is kind of obnoxious at this point, because it's like, yeah, duh, like of course, that's what they do. That's literally what the show does. Connor isn't able to take out the monster somehow, and his life is in jeopardy, but Trent is able to save him. The battle ends with Mezagag sending out his own evil Biozords that are just a repaint of the Triceratops and T-Rex. The Rangers are able to destroy them and the monster and save the day. Back at the base, everyone is happy to welcome Trent back on the team, but before Connor is able to do so, he mentions to Trent that there is an all too real chance that he's going to have to confront his father one day, and that he has to be prepared to do whatever it takes to take him down. Similar to that speech that he had with Kira when they discovered that Trent was the White Ranger. This is a really mature and realistic perspective that again shows Connor's growth as a character and his aptitude for leading this team. And this continues into the last 2 episodes of the season, episodes 37 and 38, Thunderstruck, parts 1 and 2. We open with Mezagag torturing Anton Mercer. We discover that Mezagag has finally begun to complete his transconfiguration beam that will bring the Earth back to the age of the dinosaurs. He states that he still needs the power of the Dino Gems before it's fully functional. He also sacrifices Elsa for even more power, while Trent watches in the shadows. Back at the cyber cafe, Connor and Ethan are talking about going to the movies. Guys, I don't think you understand how crazy the stakes are for this final episode. Ethan is debating whether or not he should go see Star Wars. But what they're talking about actually is the craziest thing in the world for teenagers, as Connor is surprised that Ethan is choosing to go to the movies instead of going to prom. Connor has an entire list of shorties and beezies he plans on asking, which is kind of sexist and undoes a lot of character development. But I guess it's also kind of baller, because nothing's cooler than having a list of girls on deck, right? Kira enters the scene and Connor asks who she's taking to prom, but she seems unconcerned. They're interrupted by Devin, who asks Connor for help on how to ask a girl to prom. And I'm not even gonna talk around it for dramatic purposes. It's so obvious he's talking about Cassidy here, and it's so adorable. Back at the Ranger base, Trent has told Haley and Dr. O about Mercer separating from Mezagag, and it seems as though they've developed a Mack truck to help. In the next scene, we see Devin approach Cassidy wearing his Sunday best. My man has flowers and chocolates, but before he's able to talk about prom, she informs him how the two need to get a story on the Rangers' secret identities, or else they're fired from the news station, leaving Devin determined to get the Rangers' identities in order to ask her out in time for prom. Trent confronts Mezagag about where his father is, offering to give Mezagag the Dino Gems in hopes to get Mercer in return. We cut to Elsa, who seems back to normal. Having her powers taken from her, she runs into Zeltrax. Ethan is waiting in line for tickets to the movie he wants to see when he begins to strike up a conversation with a girl that's also waiting in line. Unfortunately, Ethan is called to battle, but she offers to save his place for him. Devin overhears Ethan on his communicator with Dr. O while in this alien costume. The five pull up to confront Zeltrax, where they exchange blows in an unmorphed fight sequence until they're forced to morph, and Devin is able to catch it on camera. During the fight, Dr. O finds Elsa tied up. Zeltrax powers up and leaves a clone of himself for Connor to blow up, allowing him to sneak away. The Rangers take Elsa back to the base for tests, and Zeltrax follows after them. Trent explains Mezagag's plan with the weapon and details his counterplan to sacrifice the Dino Gems for his father in order to get the Rangers onto the island so they can destroy the weapon. Everyone seems to protest this, but Haley and Kira mention how they really have no other options. Everyone gives Trent their Dino Gems, and Elsa begins to remember everything, clearly traumatized by what Mezagag has done to her. Trent enters the base through an invisiportal when we see that Haley has finished the 18-wheeler. And I guess it's cool. I remember the toy having like a Triassic Ranger Triceratops motif to it. I don't know, in the show it just kind of looks like a bland ass Mack truck, whatever. Trent arrives at Mezagag's base with the gems, but Mezagag double crosses Trent, leaving him unconscious and without a father. The Rangers start driving at 100 miles per hour at what is essentially a brick wall, expecting an invisiportal to appear, but nothing is there. Thankfully, Trent is able to get up in time to hit a big red button, allowing for the plan to continue. Mezagag begins to power up his beam and tries to distract the Rangers with a set of Tyrannodrones, but the Rangers fight back, powerless, and continue to push forward. It's another amazing fight out of suit, and it looks like each of the Rangers still has some residual Dino Gem energy that they're able to use. The Rangers are able to fire their laser at Mezagag's laser, injuring Mezagag in the process and allowing Trent enough time to recover the gems. But he still has to find his father. He runs through Mezagag's lab as it's falling apart. The other Rangers begin to escape the island through an invisiportal as we see it collapse into the ocean. Once they arrive back at the quarry, Trent is nowhere to be found. We cut to Elsa back at the Ranger base, and Zeltrax breaks in and begins to destroy everything inside of the lab. The Rangers begin to mourn the loss of Trent and his father when Ethan says this.
It's not like they're gonna fall out of the sky and land in front of us.
Which is a full circle moment, leading to Trent arriving with his father and the Dino Gems. In the final episode, the Rangers return to their base to find it in shambles, but they're able to check the security camera footage to find Zeltrax is responsible. Mercer begins to blame himself when Dr. O comforts him. Back at the cyber cafe, Devin begins to show Cassidy the tape of the Rangers morphing, but mentions that he wants to talk to her before they watch it. Ethan returns to find his new Beezy in line, but we find that Zeltrax has created a giant robot that blows up a fucking mountain. Trent stays on ground to fight Triptoids when the Rangers call their Zords. Tommy runs full force into Zeltrax's robot to save Elsa, which is dope. This isn't the first time Tommy just like solo runs into one of Zeltrax's machines. I just really want to highlight how badass he is. Just for doing stuff like this all the time. I know some people will say he's overrated, but like no other Ranger does shit like this. Except Kira, who chooses to follow after him. Tommy finds Elsa, and the two are able to save her. They escape through a hole the Rangers were able to impale into the robot with the Thundersaurus tail. Tommy and Kira continue to fight with Zeltrax on ground and defeat him once and for all. Meanwhile, Connor and Ethan use the power of all the dinosaurs, draining them of their energy, in order to save the day, sacrificing them in the process. Thankfully, Connor and Ethan survive and all seems well, but they're interrupted by Mezagag, who survived the island's collapse. He was able to absorb enough of the Dino Gem energy to complete his final transformation. And I always laughed at this moment right here, because I low-key love how he just gave himself a BBL. It's very funny. Even when I was 4, I was like, what's the purpose of this shot? Why do we need to focus on his ass? The Rangers transform for one final battle, and Cassidy and Devin are there to record. The 5 Rangers run at Mezagag at full force with an all-American fight scene. It's Connor who has the final blow in his Battleizer mode when he seemingly takes him down. But Mezagag continues to be unfazed as he separates himself into 4 beings. The Rangers are forced to use all of the power from their dino gems in order to destroy him, depleting them fully and leaving the Rangers unable to morph. After their final battle, the Rangers find Cassidy and Devin. She shows them that she has a tape of everything that transpired. And Dr. O mentions how it would ruin their lives if that tape were to become public. And Cassidy says that she knows and gives it to them, calling them her friends and thanking them for saving the city. Cassidy and Devin walk off to go to prom, which is the very next scene. Haley is there chaperoning, Ethan is playing his Nintendo DS, and Connor is there with Krista, the tree girl, mentioning how she's special compared to any of the other girls on his list, which makes me so happy that they didn't just throw out his entire character arc for some dumbass joke. And we see that Ethan is there with a girl that he met at the movies. They mention how they can't find Kira, assuming that she may be blowing it off, given her whole counterculture shtick or whatever. And the camera pans up to Trent on a balcony as he talks to Dr. O and his father about his plans to go to art school. Dr. O mentions how he plans to stay in Reefside and hopefully have a quiet life for once, which is a really nice note to end Tommy's arc on. He's not going off to develop more Ranger tech or spy on any new teams or do anything crazy. He just wants to be home in the woods with his humble teaching job. Elsa's also there, and Dr. Mercer asks her for a dance. I'm telling you, Tommy and Elsa were endgame, dude. Like he saved her life, right? I don't know. I'm kind of pissed. I'm really upset, but I get it. Him and Kat, whatever. Him and Elsa were endgame, all right? Tommy goes on stage to introduce the band performing at the prom, which of course has Kira as the main singer. And as she performs, we see a montage going over the entire series, ending on this shot of the original 3 kids. And after seeing this, I am reminded of how far these 3 have come since the beginning of the show. And I also think about how long ago it was when I first found this show when I was a kid, and how much my life has changed since watching it. It's been 20 years since I've discovered Power Rangers. And the Dino Thunder Rangers, much like myself, have grown up a lot. Connor discovered a sense of identity and purpose through being a ranger, allowing him to shed his tough guy persona and allow himself to be aware of his motions, which ultimately makes him a great leader for this team. Ethan discovers that while he may be smart, there's a lot that he can learn from other people, even someone like Connor or Cassidy. Everyone has something valuable to offer to the table. Kira ended the series being able to open up to her friends while sticking to her morals and staying true to herself. Trent learned something similar to almost everyone here. Him being the new kid in town, he struggles to find himself and make genuine connections, trying to gain his dad's approval, going to school, and holding down a job, all while he keeps these secrets from everyone in his life out of the fear of how they'll react. But once he's able to share his authentic self, he's able to find his place on the team. Devin is a near-perfect person by literally all definitions of the word. But his relationship with Cassidy brought out the best in him. And throughout the series, Cassidy started off as this selfish teen who now has the capacity to care for others and put their needs above her own. Tommy is now depicted as a full-grown adult, and we're able to see how his years of Ranger experience allows him to be the perfect mentor for these teenagers with attitude. So, where are they now? Obviously, we see the team return in 2 crossover episodes with Power Rangers SPD. Kira shows up in Operation Overdrive as a member of the hand-selected team of Rangers picked by Sentinel Knight. The entire team shows up in suit only during the Legendary Battle, with JDF being the only Ranger reprising his role. Tommy and Trent show up during Dimensions in Danger, when a ton of Rangers that are connected to Tommy and Antonio, for whatever reason, are kidnapped by Lord Draken to create an army of evil Rangers in Power Rangers Ninja Steel. The original trio show up, in suit only with no lines, for a crossover with the other dinosaur-themed teams during Power Rangers Beast Morphers, and finally we can hear JDF morphing for one last time, off-screen, post-mortem, in Power Rangers Once and Always. And I guess a fun fact, this feels weirdly placed. Maybe I should have said this before that about JDF, but the CGI model for the Mezzodon Zord was recolored in pink and used as one of the Guardians in Juden Sentai Kyoryuger, which is the Japanese counterpart to Power Rangers Dino Charge. But I almost forgot to mention that there's actually one more episode of Power Rangers Dino Thunder, and it's actually called The Hidden Episode, which is found in volumes 4 and 5 of the DVDs. The wiki says that this is the only way to watch these episodes, but I'm almost certain that I saw a primetime airing of this on Jetix back in the day. Please let me know if I'm making that up. It opens with Ethan being interrupted by Kira at the Cyber Cafe late at night. Dr. O has requested that he chronicle the history of the Dino Rangers, as he puts it, after Zeltrax completely destroyed the lab in the season finale. While trying to hack into this computer for some reason, Ethan comes across a riddle stating that the answers he seeks lie beneath them. Kira suggests that it has to be something in the Cyber Cafe, when they find the Dino Thunder logo hidden behind the jukebox. Inside of it, they reveal a CD that Ethan then inserts into his laptop. This causes a giant stone to arise from the floor of the Cyber Cafe, where we then hear this voice.
As long as there is evil in the universe, the Power Rangers will be forged as the ultimate team.
I'm not sure if it's intentional, but I really feel like we're supposed to assume that this is Zordon. If not, my headcanon is that these are just the Morphin Masters. It requests that the two touch the stone in order to import their knowledge into the morphing grid. Kira touches the stone and we see flashbacks to her time as the Yellow Ranger, and they eventually shift into a highlight reel of the Yellow SPD Ranger.
Space Patrol Delta! Try this on for size.
Yo, that is not Z or Jack. You can tell that this was filmed way before SPD actually went into production. Ethan does the same thing, except his focus is on the blue SPD Ranger. Low-key makes you think what would happen if Dr. O or Trent touched the stone. Would it like show images of the Shadow Ranger and Omega Ranger, right? Or do you think it would just be like Bridge or something? Ethan asks Kira what's happening, and the stone explains that the universal morphing grid allows them to see into the past, present, and the future, the latter of which being Power Rangers Space Patrol Delta. The stone then gives them a verbal synopsis of the show like you'd see on the back of one of those toy boxes, and it ends with them excited to see more about the futures.
And we can't get any more of the 411 about the future?
I guess we're just gonna have to wait like everybody else.
Finishing off with the logo of Power Rangers SPD coming soon. This is something that I feel like is rarely ever talked about in the fandom. I'm not sure if people just don't know about it or like if they just don't care. What's interesting is that this could explain how the SPD Rangers are the only Rangers from the future that show up during the legendary battle in Megaforce. Since you could argue that Dr. O is maybe the one who organized all of the teams showing up in one place, maybe he knew about the SPD Rangers thanks to Ethan and Kira touching the stone and relaying the info back to him. But I'm probably just thinking way too deep about it, to be honest. I really feel like this is just meant to be fun. Dino Thunder continued to stay relevant to Power Rangers lore till the very end of the show's run. An interesting revelation occurs in issue 22 of the Mighty Morphin comic, in which we see the pink emissary. Emissaries are these beings that exist within the morphing grid that can shift between different ranger powers. They're not the Morphin Masters, they're like something different, all right? But the pink one, right? The pink emissary, we see her shifting into the pink Dino Thunder Ranger, which I almost thought about adding to our list of plot holes, but then I realized that they never specified actually how many Dino Gems there are. Considering their origin, there is potentially an endless number of colored gems. It just may be the case that Tommy was only able to discover the 3, with Mezagag finding 2 more later on. Speaking of their origins, in episode 8 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, we see the Dino Gems being created by the Morphin Masters. This is going to be our final entry on the list, because in the series it's stated that the Dino Gems came to Earth through the meteors that wiped out the dinosaurs. And while it is possible that the Morphing Masters placed the Dino Gems into Sledge's collection of meteorites, what I refuse to believe is that the Morphing Masters would create a Dino Gem that has an entire personality of its own that is pure evil. You could argue that the Morphing Masters are these all-knowing beings that believed everything would just work out in the end, but why the fuck would they do that? Trent never wanted to be evil. He always wanted to be a part of the team. He could have just been a part of the team from the beginning if that's the case. It's a really silly thing that only really matters now with the context of something that was written in haphazardly 10 years later or so. Looking at this list, I cannot find a single thing that truly took away from my enjoyment of the show. Power Rangers Dino Thunder was my first season, and while there may be many things that seem off during a rewatch, I can confidently say that none of this matters to me. And maybe that's nostalgia talking, but I love this show now just as much as I did 20 years ago when I first discovered it as a child. Thank you for watching.